This
We're going to open
conference will now be recorded.
on Thursday, June 29th, 2023 at 5. Okay. This is a budget committee meeting to approve the budget minutes from our budget session. So I would take a roll. I know you're right. I for the special meeting for that. So I'll take a quick roll call. Thank you, John. Councilor Tidy? Here. Councilor Rapp?
Here.
Councilor Velazquez?
Here.
Councilor Podwitz? Here. Councilor Burns?
Here.
And then the budget committee members are hearing remotely. Corey Ashour? Corey Ashour present. Corey, could you say here or present? Okay, we'll switch to Barbara Wright for a second. Barbara, are you present? You're muted, Barbara.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Barbara Wright
I am here.
present. And I see Corey Ashour. And Corey, could you say present?
I can't hear.
Oh. Corey, does it help if we talk into the microphone better? Does that do anything, Corey? Okay. Corey, can you check your buttons on your computer or something?
I don't know if she's hearing anything at all.
Okay, let the record show that Corey Ashour is present. She is having some technical difficulties. And if she overcomes those, she can state it here. Does anyone have Corey's phone number? Does anyone have her phone number? Can you call her on speakerphone and put her speakerphone on your microphone? Is that working any different, Corey?
Hi, this is Corey.
Hi, Corey. We can't hear you.
I can't hear you guys either at all. So what should I do? Call in?
Well, you are on. We can hear you now.
Find that number and
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
I can't hear you. Let me see if I can now if I plug you back in.
Look at settings.
But we can hear her when she's talking.
Yeah, she has her earplugs in, but not your earplugs.
Well, so it says that my computer audio is on.
Corey?
We can hear you.
Okay, so how about you just tell me when I need to vote and I'll just say yes
Well,
and approve the minutes.
have you had a chance to review the minutes?
Have you had a chance to review the minutes?
Yeah, I did.
Thank you. And ask her.
Do you want to just hang on to the phone?
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks, Wiz.
Let's show that Corey Ashour is present and she's on the phone. Okay. So what we need now is a motion to accept the minutes of the. Please.
I make a motion to accept the minutes of the May 31st budget meeting.
We have a question from staff.
There are actually two corrections that were made on these minutes. First one, Gary Burns was incorrectly listed as absent. It was Commissioner Webb that was absent, so that correction has been made. And then the minutes were prepared with using the video available at it, and then I included the YouTube link. So those corrections have been made since the packet was handed out.
Okay, so the minutes from the corrections on
I do not believe so. They might.
but the only reason, so the easiest way probably would be, well, we can have a little discussion. So is there any other corrections that people see on minutes here? Give Tim a minute. I'll give Tim a minute.
Perfect. Well, Gary, oh, he's listed in the
Yeah, it was just the attendance. Okay, so if there's no other additions or questions, I think the cleanest thing to do would be if you would withdraw your second and you'd withdraw your first, and then we just move to accept them with the changes stated by.
I'll rescind my second.
I'll rescind my motion. It may make sense for somebody else to make the motion, because I actually wasn't at this meeting. I did review it, but I wasn't present, so.
I want to abstain.
Motion to accept the, now we need to.
So the budget committee minutes as amended, yeah, with those corrections.
As changed, changed by Joseph.
Second. Okay, any other discussion? I'll call for the vote. Councilor Burns?
Yes.
Councilor Tidy? Yes. Councilor Pogwitz?
Yes.
Councilor Rath?
Yes.
And Councilor Velez.
Abstain.
And what about the
Oh,
budget committee?
exactly. Barbara Wright
Yes?
and Corey Ashour.
Yes.
All right, thank you again for serving on the budget committee. It was very helpful. It's super important, and you were a few of the people that stepped up. It's very, very appreciated. Most important part of the year. Okay, so we will close this special
Thank
meeting.
you.
and-
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye. Thanks for all your
Bye.
hard work. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
I'm gonna start wearing my glasses everywhere. We'll close this special meeting at 5:30. That means we can open this next meeting up on time at 5:30. This is the Thursday, June 29th special session of the City of Port Orford City Council. We'll start with the call to order, which I know we just did, but we're in a whole new meeting now. Councilor Tidy? Present. Councilor Rath?
Present.
Councilor Velez?
Present.
Councilor Burns?
Present.
And Councilor Pogwitz?
Present.
And we have our administrator, John Huddle, myself, Pat Cox, the mayor, and our recorder, Joseph Harrison. I didn't even see you walk in yet. You're wearing that, your shirt blended in with your face, because you're getting pretty tan. Anyhow, John Isidore, head of public works, is also here. And Councilor Webb is not present at this time, and since we are in this meeting, I forgot to state that in the last meeting, but I'm sure it was recorded regardless. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance really quick. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I don't believe we have any presentations to the council, so we'll move right into the consent calendar. It's the minutes for January, February, May, and the St. John's Church sign application.
I have one minor amendment for the January minutes, so does that mean?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead and state your.
The amendment is that on page 4 of the January 19th minutes, the Watershed Council planted 420 trees the first week in January, not in July. For those January minutes, yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar with, and changes.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Councilor Burns,
Yes.
Councilor Rask,
Yes.
Councilor Tidy,
Yes.
Councilor Velisis,
Yes.
and Councilor Pogwitz.
Yes.
Okay, we will move into citizen concerns now. Please speak only about items on the agenda. You'll have an opportunity at the end of the meeting to speak about anything you'd like. Do we have a list, or would anyone like to speak on anything for the agenda?
I think many of the people are here for the public hearing, so is that a separate, that's a separate moment, right?
Yes.
Question. Our turnover dinner for Rotary is at 5:30 today also. Anything we can do to speed up the presentation would be much appreciated.
Okay. So, hearing that, that's a good public comment. Anyone else? Okay. So I am going to open up this public hearing at 5:34 to hear any public comment about the community development block grant opportunity.
I'd like to give a brief staff report first. So what I want to do for the record is read the legal and public notice. This was published June 21st, 2023 in the Port Orford News, Curry County, Oregon, which is a newspaper of record. Public notice and notice of public hearing. The city of Port Orford is eligible to apply for a 2023 Community Development Block Grant from the Business Oregon Community Development Block Grant Funds come from U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The grants can be used for public facilities and housing improvements, primarily for persons with low and moderate income. Approximately $11 million will be awarded to Oregon non-metropolitan cities and counties in 2023. The maximum grant that a city or county can receive is $1,500,000. The city of Port Orford is preparing an application for a 2023 Community Development Block Grant from the Business Oregon for the Port Orford American Legion Hall and Community Building remodel located at 421 11th Street, Port Orford, map 35 South, 15 West, 05 AD, tax lots 4100 and 4101, to remodel, upgrade, and make more accessible the city's community building. It is estimated that the proposed project will benefit at least 1,200 persons, of whom 56.15% will be low or moderate income. A public hearing will be held by the Common Council for the City of Port Orford at 5:30 p.m. on Thursday, June 29, 2023, at 555 West 20th Street, Port Orford, Oregon, in the council chambers. The purpose of the hearing is for the City Council to obtain citizen views and to respond to questions and comments about the community development and housing needs, especially the needs of low and moderate income persons, as well as the needs in the community that might be assisted with the Community Development Block Grant Project and the proposed project. Written comments are also welcome and must be received by June 29, 2023 at the Port Orford City Hall. Attention City Council, 555 West 20th Street, Port Orford, Oregon, 97465. Both oral and written comments will be considered by the City Council in deciding whether to apply. The location of the hearing is accessible to persons with disabilities. Please contact City Administrator John Huddle at 541-366-4568 if you will need any special accommodations to attend or participate in the meeting. More information about the Oregon Community Development Block Grants, the proposed project, and records about the city's past use of Community Development Block Grant funds is available for public review at City Hall during regular office hours. Advance notice is requested. If special accommodations are needed, please notify City Administrator John Huddle at 541-366-4568 so that appropriate assistance can be provided. Permanent involuntary displacement of persons or businesses is not anticipated as a result from the proposed project. If displacement becomes necessary, alternatives will be examined to minimize the displacement and provide required reasonable benefits to those displaced. Any low and moderate income housing that is demolished or converted to another use will be replaced. Again, that was published June 21st, 2023, and read into the record today, June 29th, 2023. Briefly, this project, I think many of the council members are familiar with it. It is to improve accessibility to the community building, and I will shorten the presentation as such. And instead of giving a long dissertation about the project, it's to upgrade primarily the access, some of the bathrooms, and some of the architectural elements. We had an architectural estimate of probably $1.2 2 or 3 million. And that was in 2019, and the grant authority has asked for us to update that, and I've contacted the architect, and he will be providing that update. And then that's all I have, unless there are questions, and if you wanted to hear from any citizens, Mr. Mayor.
Any citizens have anything to add? Could you read that announcement one more time for John?
Legal and public notice.
Thank you. Okay, so any questions from counselors?
I have 2 questions I'd like to ask, or may I make a public comment? One is, I was reading through all the different components of this, and I know one thing that we could possibly get points on as a benefit is to consider sustainability of this building. I think one of the things that we've had as a problem in this building is that the heating system is old, defunct. I think that will be replaced, but it means that we don't get the chance to leave the heat on all the time. It would be great if we could keep it warm and dry so we don't have mold, so it's a welcoming, inviting place. And so I think we might consider sustainability, such as, making sure we have the greenest HVAC system, maybe even considering even solar panels. So anyway, those are some thoughts.
Thank you.
And because they want an update, is it going to be the same public outreach and notices and hearings as it was the first go around, or is it just updating the numbers?
It's the updating of the financials. The project scope hasn't really changed.
Okay, yeah.
Because part of our application needs to show the financial wherewithal to carry out the project. And so between the grant amount that we anticipate receiving and the support from the community, we think we'll be able to show the financial wherewithal, but the grant authority wants to make sure it's the current financial wherewithal, not from years ago.
Which is a nice safeguard for this is, they won't move forward if we couldn't handle it.
What's the match for this? The match is it's a financial ability to complete. And I'm not really sure of the match amount, but again, what they want to make sure is we have I think it's essentially, we have to complete the project. So if the budget comes in here and the grant is here, this is essentially the match and it doesn't have to be from the city, it could be from the community or other sources. We're looking at other granting agencies besides the local community police. And so that's what we're trying to do. And so in your packet
Many times, in kind is considered match, and these kinds of, and that would be so important for us to be documenting, because just sitting here, all of us, it's in kind talking about this project. So it adds up quick.
And the staff administration, there's a lot of paper processing, a lot of processing of documents, everything like that. So you are correct, going out to bid, preparing the bid documents, that's all things that city staff does that I think can be in kind.
Thank you.
Thank you as well.
Could there be a situation where the city's liable for money that we don't have?
I think the answer, if I'm understanding your question, the answer is no, because the idea would be in our grant application, we're going to show them that we have the funds to complete it.
Do we have the funds?
Well, that is the question we have to answer. Currently, the 2019 architect estimate was like 1.3 or something, and the grant amount is 1.5, but the conventional wisdom is since 2019, costs have gone up. And so to answer your question, it's going to be after we get the architect estimate. And then what we're anticipating, we may hear from some folks, but we think we will get from community support as well as perhaps other sources that there would, other than the in-kind contribution that Councilman Pog was talking about, there wouldn't be much city out of pocket, I suppose, if that's your question.
Right, and a long story short, they won't look, I didn't
Yeah,
say it like
it's
that.
okay.
They won't lend the money to us if we can't
Yeah.
financially handle the burden. Like,
Yeah.
that's the whole part. That's why they need the updates, so they can rework those calculations that were good in 2000.
Yeah, we would know that by the time we apply.
So no.
Yeah.
We won't be on the hook.
Yeah.
Until we
side to side.
One other comment, the volunteers have put in a great amount of time, and their in-kind also counts towards this. So it's gonna be, it's hard to ask them how much, but I'm pretty sure we have some folks here that are very competent, and they could come up with how much time they spent on it already. So,
And again, I'd have to confirm all the part about the in-kind counting towards the
Okay.
match, but, and the match figures. All I know is we have to show the financial ability to complete the project at the time of the application, and we'll know that, but we have to.
I had actually prepared a few brief comments, anticipating the whole city being here today.
Mhm.
So if I could.
Absolutely, come on.
Council. First off, I want to introduce the committee members that we have here, if that's permissible. We've got Toby Porter, my co-chair. We've got Vicki and Larry Young. We've got Vicky O'Shaughnessy, and we've got John and Karen Copeland, and we've got Bob and Michelle Hunter. All hardworking committee members.
Thank you all very much.
And I just want to briefly state, in 2018, a fundraising committee.
Mr. Johnston, you're on the committee too, right?
I think you left off two people.
Some days I think probably want to be, but yes, I am.
Close to the speaker. Anyone else? Anyone else that you had not mentioned?
Not that are here,
Oh, wait,
unless I missed them.
okay, never. Okay.
Could you talk into the microphone, John?
Oh, no.
Your better half, sir?
Speaking to your microphone.
She's at the turnover game.
No, but is she on the committee as well? Okay, never mind. Then
She's a smart one.
okay, very good.
John, can you please state your name and speak into the microphone?
Oh, sure. My name's John Johnston. I live at 94841 Elk River Road. Port Orford. Okay.
Just bring the microphone closer to your mouth.
Is it on?
Just take the mic and put it,
It's on.
there you go.
Okay. The committee consists of actually 17 neighbors and co-chaired by Toby and myself. And I gave you or introduced you to the committee members. The fundraising activities resulted in donors that included individuals, companies, foundations, and tax-exempt funds for a total of 143 separate donors. I say that because that's all evidence of community support, okay? We have generated a little over $140,000, which sits in a 501c3 in the community fund account. The project received support letters from the president of the Port Orford Main Street Revitalization Association. The city council approved the needs assessment and conceptual design created by HGE Architects dated 10/2019. I find it really hard to believe that we've been working on this project for 5 years. COVID definitely had some impact on that, but more recently, the city council voted unanimously to proceed with the project. Grants have been obtained from Cycle Oregon and the Ford Family Foundation. The current funding activities include collecting tennis shoes and donation houses that you may have seen. Donation houses. The committee has been dormant through COVID and beyond. You could help with this project by depositing your loose change in these boxes, which will be in the back of the room. I was anticipating we'd have some citizens here that participate, okay? We also have a level of giving sheet that if you wanted to get a tax deduction, you could talk to us about a substantial donation or $1,000 or whatever, your family can afford. So you can also go to our website, which is portorfordcommunitycenter.org. There's a donate now comment on there. And if anybody was here to listen besides you guys and our committee, thank you very much for coming and listening. So, okay, any questions?
John, can you clarify, are you guys a 501c3?
We are not a 501c. We have, I can hand you this sheet. We have a fiscal agent.
Okay.
Who is a community service fund.
Okay.
It's actually an organization that Rotary started, but it's separate from Rotary. Rotary has never adopted this project as a project. There are Rotary members involved, including myself and Dick Lowell. I don't know if you know that name, but it is not a Rotary project. But we are using that 501c3.
Okay.
So here's a sheet just that can't answer that question.
Okay. I'll give it to
And anybody
Don when
else
I'm
who
done.
wants one, I have extras. Okay, any other questions? Hopefully, I didn't interrupt John's
No,
public hearing.
no, you are speaking at the public hearing.
Yeah, I know.
Participating. And then in your packet, there is just a motion to make a resolution in support of moving forward with the project. It's at your places. Actually, in your packet was a template of a memorandum that didn't have any substance to it. And so at your places is the resolution.
The fundraising committee is anxious to get back to work.
I make a motion
Go
to,
Whoa,
I make,
whoa, we're in a public hearing, we're not
Yeah.
making any motions right now.
You're in charge, Mayor. You are correct.
Okay. Sorry. All right, so no further public comment or anything from council?
I have a
Your
question.
staff report? Yeah, go ahead.
So have all of the plans been finalized and everything? You guys know exactly what you're doing and now it's just looking for money or, well, our question.
So,
That's a schematic.
sure, we have architect drawings and estimates, and then with that, we go out to bid and ask contractors, but we have to get awarded first, and then we go out to bid and ask contractors to build it. And that, I'm not sure what you mean by are the plans finalized, but
The architectural plans, are they finalized?
they are, I mean, I mean, I don't know when an architectural plan is finalized, but the architectural, right, it's a pretty, I don't know how to explain it, and I have the pictures at my desk. Do you have them?
I don't have them, but
Okay.
the answer is no.
Yeah.
Barry. There's schematics, there's budgets, there's concept drawings. The architectural plans need to be done. That's part of the fundraising. That's where some of the fundraising money is going to go. That's probably a good $100,000 to do a plan and create documents that can go out for bid.
Thank you.
And it's part of it, the grantors or the funders need so much information to make sure you're invested. Like, that's the big part of it. They want to make sure you're invested and you can back it up. And then after you get the funding, they ballpark the engineering and the architecture and all that. And then when you get awarded it.
I get the reason for my question is there any more room for public input on the design and the use and all that kind of stuff?
That was kind of my question earlier too, like, because I'm sure that process was gone through. Originally, I mean, just because of the stipulations of
What's the
the,
presentation?
yes. So, yes, there was.
We've actually had 2 public hearings during the schematic stage. And I think it would be a big mistake to not bring the community in as those plans documents that could go out for bid or finalized. So I think that's a good process.
there's been as you guys know, over the past year, there's been all sorts of new interest in different kinds of things in the community building. And it would be great to just make sure we can, accommodate as many of the uses that the community sees fit to use. It would just be great to make it a real hub of our community and make it a vital place. So I think that's a great suggestion.
It's a good example for us too, that do the process, but you can do a little extra too, to make sure you get the community outreach that you want. So, any other discussion on the public hearing or questions? Okay. You can see that one? That's impressive. Thank you. So we'll close this public hearing at 5:52. Okay. And now, let's see, we have department.
Now we make a motion, may I make a motion?
No, I know, I was just
Okay.
looking at my original agenda, and one thing to mention before we do that, did we used to have additions to the agenda, like at the start of it, in case we did have any additions? like on the agenda itself. I don't know if I'm thinking about both my agendas or other agendas, but, and I could just call for the question, but we might want to consider having, under call to order additions to the agenda.
I always thought they were on there.
I did too, no, I just, so.
But anyway, so what we have on the table now is resolution 2023. Get with you. Go ahead, Joseph.
I actually did have an addition to the agenda, so we can get that, it's not pressing. If you want to do it now, we can do it now, or we can wait until after.
But let's wait till after we get through this, just as everybody's queued up for it. So
I'd make a motion to approve resolution 2023-12, which is to submit for community development block grant, a CDBG grant to remodel and upgrade access for the community building in Legion Hall.
Second.
any discussion on that? All right, I will call for the vote. Councilor Burns?
Yes.
Councilor Rath?
Yes.
Councilor Velisis?
Yes.
Councilor Podwitz?
Kim, yes.
And Councilor Tidy?
Yes.
I gotta look up the vote. Okay, so we are done with that. Joseph, would you like to fill us in on your addition to the agenda, please?
Earlier today, we had a gentleman come by and drop off a temporary OLCC approval. It meant to be added in, just didn't get around to it. I printed off copies and put them on each of the tables.
We can't.
I just want to bring it up.
We didn't get it by Thursday.
Yeah, but also, this has to go to OLCC for their approval, and they have a day to do that, so I don't think they didn't turn it in time. You know what I mean? This still has to go to OLCC for them to approve.
Well, I thought we were part of the checklist of it going to
And if you,
OLCC.
it is, we are the first checklist, and then if you look actually on the application, there's a big spot that says for OLCC approval right here, and that's for them to actually approve it. They haven't approved it.
Oh, and then
We're here a day ahead. We can say yes to this, but if the OLCC is gonna be the one.
And this just got put in front of us before the meeting.
I don't have a copy of it, I haven't seen it.
But the main question is, this happened yesterday or today?
Earlier today, yes.
Okay, so functionally, I have a huge problem with this. Not this issue, not this thing, but that means anybody could drop something on us the day before without it being, so that's my first thing to swallow. John, am I over thinking this?
Well, what you have is what sounds like a request to add an item to tonight's agenda, and you are debating whether to add this to the agenda tonight or not.
May I speak?
Yes.
So I agree with Pat. So the reason why we've asked for additions to the agenda are urgent situations, in my opinion, is what the way we've handled them in the past. To have something dropped on the desk in front of us before a meeting, I didn't even get one, but it's just, it disrupts the meeting, in my opinion. So I'll go along with whatever council wants to do, but I don't like to have stuff put on the desk in front of me at a meeting, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and there's that my side of the brain too, but then there's this little compassionate part where
I agree.
because of this circumstance, we're gonna hurt somebody. Like, yeah, but you haven't looked at it, so.
I agree, but I haven't looked at it, so I would have to sit here and read this whole document before I would say yes to it.
But then that side of my brain goes back to rules are the rules are the rules, and.
On the compassionate side, I think the OLCC is not going to see this in time. I'm just saying. They're not going to be at work on Monday, and Tuesday's the holiday when they're expecting this. They've got literally tomorrow to do it.
And I would hate for somebody to have a sign off from the city and think it's okay to go
Yeah,
ahead and do
that's my big thing too,
to
honestly.
do your OLCC thing, because it's not. OLCC is the organization that approves these kinds of things.
And not to get off track too much, but we need to establish firmly that we don't get things after Thursday was the day, is the cutoff, or is it Wednesday now?
I think it's Wednesday now.
But regardless, yeah, I think it is too, but regardless, we have to establish that so Joseph knows that he can just say sorry, or John or whoever can just say sorry. But if it's an emergency, then obviously you call me, it's only a 24-hour notice we have to do for emergencies. stuff, so
We,
knock
we've
on
been
wood.
doing a lot of stuff lately. I mean, it's since January that, oh, it's the 4th of July, they need money, or it's this, we gotta change this. So, so we have been doing that a lot. So to me, we had decided actually last December that we would go through the council rules and like update them and, not to go back to that, but I think that it would make sense. We've been kind of in this limbo of just trying to do things, and I think we have to go back, look at that, get clear, and
Well, it was an unspoken rule for the last two mayorships that we didn't do the additions to the agenda. And I'm not trying to be the mean guy here. It's basically because of what Pat just explained. It may be a bigger document next time. Maybe somebody wanting to have an approval to do something, and we have to sit and read through a 10 or 12-page document. Us approving this is not going to get them an approval from OLCC for the 4th of July. Because they would have to be done on Monday. I don't know if that can even happen.
And I agree with Tim that giving them the false hope. City says it's okay, so when they do it, you know what I mean?
So I mean, that's probably ultimately is that form filled out? Like, we're sure that it's not like that's the process, it's not stamped by OLCC, so that should, in my opinion, answer the question. If the form's not correct, then like you say, the timeline.
I read it, but if you look, there's a checkbox that says OLCC use after ours.
And is that a convenience thing? Like, in your experience, John, additions to the agenda, like what would be the cutoff date on that? Would it be right at the start of the meeting and then, additions to the agenda, you get a consensus that it goes on the agenda?
I mean, I don't want to deny it.
Maybe have all of us in consensus to decide yes or no.
And I think that's kind of the Robert Rules of it, but.
So the state law says that the agenda must include the principal subjects of the meeting and has to be advertised, but that does not preclude the council from considering other topics. So it leaves the door open for agenda amendments, even at the last minute. And everywhere I've been, it's basically a case-by-case basis, really. So having a hard rule about it is tricky because you could have someone come up at public comments and say, I would like you guys to do this, here's what I'm talking about, and you may be able to make a decision on something. But again, I've always seen it as case-by-case basis.
Okay.
So,
but it's will of the council for sure, and it would be.
Right. Yeah. So I'm going to call for a consensus on putting this OLCC application on the agenda. Any discussion on that? I know, for mine, it's a consensus. Counselor, yeah, because that's basically the main question. So we're gonna see if we're putting this on the agenda. Counselor Tidy? No. Counselor Rath?
No.
Counselor Burns?
No.
Counselor Velisis?
yes.
And Counselor Pogwitz?
No.
Okay.
So,
Sorry, Mr. Mayor,
yes.
I need to stick my head in the lines now
Please
because
do.
I have an item to add to the agenda.
Okay.
Or request to be added to the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
On Tuesday, I met with the labor unions, met with the public works union in the afternoon, the police union in the morning. And I was hoping to relay all that information to the city council and then get direction from the city council. And that's an item of executive session under ORS 192.660 sub 2 sub D to confer with designated representatives regarding labor negotiations. And that can be done in executive session. And I was hoping we could have a brief executive session at the end of the meeting. We don't make any decisions in executive session. What we talk about in there can't be discussed, but I would go as quickly as I could. I think a lot of it's pretty intuitive and self-explanatory. You wouldn't be making any decisions, just giving me directions.
Okay. So would the proper way to do that at the end of the meeting, just to make a motion to go into executive session? Like, do we have to add that type of thing to the agenda?
I think it would be, it's an agenda item, executive session, so I'm just asking if there would be a motion to add executive session to tonight's agenda.
I apologize, everyone. I look at two different agendas, and sometimes I think that there's stuff on this one.
So it's not on our agenda.
Correct.
Is it okay to go into an executive session without posting a notice? That'd be my first one.
The answer is yes.
Okay then.
Because it's not about personnel, it's
Yeah.
labor and
Okay.
negotiations.
Want to
Okay.
make sure on that.
Yeah, consensus.
No, that's good. That's what we're here for. So,
And the thing is, if you don't go into executive session, we'd have to call another special meeting and all that. So I'm just trying to do the fewer meetings.
I'm good with that.
See, I consider that an emergency, almost an emergency
And
situation. where-
my question is, did I mess up by getting a consensus and not a vote, not a roll call?
You did take a roll call vote, technically. You asked each
Oh,
individual.
okay, so we're covered either way then.
Yeah.
that wasn't it. You're right.
So that was on the other item.
Okay. Well,
Do you need a roll call vote on this item?
yeah, I would like, so basically I'd entertain a motion to add the exec session to the agenda and then we would cover it later. But it's just a motion to,
I'll make a motion to add the executive session, to discussion of union negotiations.
second.
Okay, Councilor Rath,
Yes.
Councilor Valais,
Yes.
Councilor Burns,
Yes.
Councilor Podley,
Tim, yes.
and Councilor Page.
Yes.
I have one question about that, real quick, since it's right on the same thing. Could we, I like what you guys do at the port. You have executive session listed on your agenda, even if you don't, and that would just, it'd be there in case we needed it. Can we add that to our agenda? Should we add that to our
We
agenda?
could, but remember, we always have Shayla, well, and now we have John too, that can Google it, or even, we could Google up the ORS to do it. The reason, the board does it for a legitimate reason, because it was an issue that came up. So it helps, make sure that we have those three, which, we could do that, but that goes back to changing the charter and the
Okay,
council
you're right,
rules
you're
of
right.
changing.
The only other thing I would say to that is I worked at a place where they did have a lot of executive sessions and they were criticized for not practicing open government. So if you're, because they're,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
I don't think you want to just have them all the time.
No,
It could be an appearance item.
And that's why I asked that question. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so that is added to the agenda. We are on to departmental reports. We can keep this pretty short, I think, because it's a special session, not a regular meeting. John's here though. John Isidore, head of public works. So, do you have any emergencies?
No, not this time. I think we're good. We're just chasing leaks and trying to do the cleanup for 4th of July and stuff, so.
If I could, Mayor, I think under department reports, we did have some reports of potholes, some complaints of potholes. I think you saw some material on that, and I don't know if, John, you just wanted to, oh, sorry.
I did. I met with the one property owner today. We're working on a state grant that's gonna cover 250,000-ish for safe roads through ODOT and Civil West. So Civil West is gonna give us the quotes and estimates we need for it. So we went up, we had to dumb it down because the cost of 18th Street from the top to the county line was 1.1 million.
Yeah.
So we dumbed it down and went up and measured out the bad sections, hoping to get enough money. Hensley Hill needs about an $80,000 road repair where it's sliding off the edge of the cliff. So take 85 out of 250, that's what I got for Vista. And I think hopefully I can piecemeal most of the real bad areas. And then I'm gonna talk to the county and see if they would be willing to seal coat. I'm sure there's a price there. Maybe they could chip seal once we get the potholes or paving done work, and then we just reseal the rest of it. That should buy us 5 years or so. So that's kind of the direction I'm going.
So John, I don't know if you were aware, when Port Orford Loop was paved, we were able to piggyback on the county doing the county's portion. And it was about 100,000 to go from Mather Drive to the highway.
Right.
So I'm wondering if we can piggytail. They were supposed to come back and do Hensley Hill the next year, which they have not.
Right.
I'm wondering, like you said, contact them, see if we can piggyback on them. Tidewater will already be there, and it'll be a lot cheaper, I think.
Yeah, I did meet with Tidewater, and he said he would take a look at it, but I need to get a hold of one of his bosses down there, the guy here operationally can't.
Okay.
do that, but if we don't get the grant, we're talking probably 50 to 80. I think the estimates are high by Civil West because the price of asphalt's so high and materials and everything right now.
Yeah.
But I was shocked at 1.1 million
Right.
for 6/10 of a 20-foot wide double lane road.
And that's about what that Port Orford Loop Road was. It was from Mather to the highway, it's about 6/10 of a mile.
Yeah.
And it was about $100,000.
Well, it's 10 times that now.
Well, that's one thing, being remote, being in Port Orford, not anywhere close to an asphalt plant, really bumps everything up.
That's when you gotta piggyback.
And part of the problem is, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it services all the county residents, which pay no taxes for that section of road. We've got one, the guy that lives at the top, he's the last city lot. So, there's always the option of annexation or passing a mill increase for a couple of years to pay for that. There's lots of ways to do it, but that's something that could be discussed if we just can't find a way to fund to repair that road. John even mentioned vacating that section. So there's several options out there, but we sure don't have $1 million to go pave that road, and the base is failing on it. So,
Is it illegal to have a gravel road in the city?
no, but try to maintain a gravel road. You think the potholes are bad now?
No, I'm just saying you can hire a grader a lot of times for $1 million. I'm just saying. No, I mean, you can hire someone to grade a road a lot of times for, I'm just sorry, I'm not.
No, and I thought that too, but I thought the headache it would create to be constantly going up there every week with the rains we get in the wintertime and stuff, it'd be a nightmare to maintain it in the wintertime. The ideal solution for me would be do a 3-inch grind or whatever the depth of that chip seal is, which is not very deep, is grind it in place, compact it. Don't even take the material out. That wrap works really well for this.
Yeah.
Just grind it, roll the crap out of it, put a 2-inch overlay on it, keep the lane to 20 feet, no center line, and just be done with it. It's the best option. And that came in at like $700,000. So I know it's a lot of money. And so I did have a good conversation with the homeowner, and he understood 100%. He said he was just upset because he didn't get the communication he was hoping for. And so I gave him my phone number and said, you get bad holes, give me a call, we'll plug them. Yeah, July's our new fiscal year, so we'll buy a couple pallets of cold patch, and we'll get it patched back up, and hopefully that holds us until September when that grant is due. And then I don't know how long it takes to get the money, but it would be the following summer, probably before the summer money, I imagine. So that's kind of where we're at. We got visitor center all painted and cleaned up. I think it looks way better than it ever did. So that's kind of, we're putting a lot of focus to the park stuff, especially when we found out they had that much money. We want to help grade out.
Your new best friend.
Right? So we want to paint and clean up 12th Street boat ramp bathrooms and stuff because they're bad and the gazebo's all falling apart. So we're going to try to do that stuff this summer while we can. And maybe Buffington, the baseball dugouts look terrible, and so does the racquetball thing. So it'd be nice to get those painted and cleaned up this summer while we have the time. So until somebody says don't do it, we're just going to kind of keep going, working towards getting everything cleaned up and making it look better.
Maintenance.
In between water lines.
The water line.
Yeah, and that's my big question for your report is, obviously we're gonna be talking about meters pretty soon.
Real soon.
So one thing, just so I don't seem mean in that meeting, if we could narrow down the correlator. I think part of the council is assuming that we're gonna get these meters and it's gonna pinpoint the leak between the meters. And he said it in the last meeting that we need a correlator for it, and that's an added cost, so. It'd be nice if you asked it, or if you talked to him and you don't mind asking him, so I don't have to do it in the middle of a meeting.
Sure, I will. We have a pretty good one now that when it's a permanent leak, you can hear it. You just need the warning when it's quiet and no wind.
But that's your listening device, right?
Yes.
I'm talking about a correlator that you hook up on either side, or there's points that you can hook up to that really do pinpoint where the leak is.
They make them for non-metallic pipe, because everyone I've ever seen, it had to be a metallic pipe, and 70-something% of our system is transite. So
Okay.
it doesn't, you know what I mean? It doesn't ping very well. But I can look into it and see, maybe,
That'd be great.
technology has changed. I'll definitely dive into it. Yeah,
Could be a
absolutely.
sound thing.
Maybe.
it doesn't carry far, but yeah, it definitely isn't as good. So, any other questions on the added? Go ahead.
I was curious about the water, how our level in the water tank and,
Well, we had a break on DD last night at some point, and we lost a couple of feet, 2.5 feet or so. We found it. The guy found it at 5 a.m., called us at 7, and we had it sealed up about, well, we had to shut off real quick. We got it shut off at around 7:30, 7:45 when everybody showed up. Shut down the pump station, killed everybody's water, and then we had it repaired by, I don't know, 8:30, but then 2 hours of glue time to dry. And then we got them back on around 11 and handed out boil water notices, but we did lose 2.5 feet or so, which took us to 23 feet. But right now, since I'm running the plant, we're at 25.3 currently, so 25. So we haven't been pushing it to 28 like we had in the past because we're seeing a lot of explosions after 20 feet. So maintain 25, 26 feet, and it's summertime unless we have a bad fire or a break, then and it's limiting, trying to cut back on our overtime a bit too.
so for the curtailment, do we need to be in the curtailment right now?
Well, yeah, it's not so much about what we have in the tank per se, it's what we're losing at night and what we're making during the day. And we lose more at night than what we make during the day by half. So you have a break, you have something like that, it would take probably 4 or 5 days to recover that 2 feet, probably. As long as we don't have another break.
I just feel like we're not really communicating with the community really at all about how much water they should be using and what, the situation is. Because we just look at the comments on Facebook and.
Right, well, that conversation got tabled for the next meeting in a way, or that whole, that whole conversation. And there's a lot to it, so we will definitely be talking about that.
I think we said we would have a workshop. I think that's what John recommended.
Oh, right.
We did, we had a meeting last week, actually.
Yeah, I know, but that's a meeting, and when something gets tabled at this meeting, we'll go with information or, pass that along.
I think during that meeting, we should have passed that, I guess it's probably my fault, but,
we don't even have to talk anything about that right now, because we'll relay it to, when it's gonna be on the agenda, we'll talk about it and all of that good stuff, because it is a conversation.
It is.
I would just like to bring up one thing, especially since I see these wonderful watershed council members here, that in your long list of maintenance, all for months we've been asking about putting the wetland walkway back onto the fixed list. And do we have any update on that?
It's above, I would say, our skill level at Public Works. I'd say it needs to get subbed out because it's working in a wetlands. And there's a lot of trash and debris, and I don't see it as something we could do. The hope was the high school was gonna take it on, but that fell apart. It kind of needs to be contracted, and it's gonna be a pretty costly project because there's a lot of rotten wood in that structure that was put in. I mean, it's rotten, it's unsafe. We boarded it off for that reason. So I don't know where we're at on that, really, I don't. It just kind of got boarded off, and at one point we were looking at the high school, and I don't think we went any farther.
Yeah, and then we heard that the insurance would cover it, then John looked into it, and it's probably not gonna cover it, so we've kind of been, it's been kind of a little thing that's been kicked along that people in the neighborhood and community would like to, figure it out. So John, hopefully that's something, I know you have it on your very long list at some point to figure out.
Well, we might have to think of it backwards, see what they will replace, you know what I mean, or what they would fund for it, and then plan the repair from that number.
Yeah, I don't think we can count on the insurance.
That was misinformation that we got.
I think it was
hard to picture.
Yeah, it's kind of wishful thinking.
Yeah, I guess when it's not, there's way too many angles for them to dispute it. Gotcha.
Well, there is names on that plaque of the people that, or the entities, I'm sorry, that supported that project.
Yes.
I wonder if we could go back to them and see if there's grant money out there to repair and upkeep.
One of the big donors of it was, or funders was ODOT.
Right.
And then a lot of the organizations that supported it, so.
Is it a multimodal, transportation element and anything like that?
John, do you remember any of that since you're here? You were one of the people.
I think the Corps was involved in an EPA, because it was wetlands and stuff. There was
Yeah.
several entities on that plaque that,
You know,
contributed to it.
Yeah, well, why don't we have, okay, well, we're a little bit back to the drawing board, but maybe we can add that to a conversation with some of our DEQ partners or something.
Another obstacle we may run into with that is, I believe it's pressure treated, and I'm not sure they're gonna allow us to, most likely it's gonna have to be tore down and rebuilt without pressure treated.
I seem to remember at some point last year, John, you said you thought the piers were actually still okay, the parts in the,
Some of them.
but, okay.
So maybe we should just consider trying to get funding maybe from the Coquille tribe or something, because they give stuff out every year to just get that removed, get the area cleaned up, and then from there, we can move forward with another construction or fund it a different way, but maybe that doesn't mean we can't make it better.
Yeah, okay, so those are some things we can continue to work on
Yeah,
offline.
Use a metal walkway this time.
Yeah.
And it won't rot.
Yeah,
Concrete.
just call me Friends of Alaska, I'm sure they have it in their backyard. Okay, any other public?
If we build wooden structures like that and don't maintain them, it's a waste of money to even do it originally, because wood does not last. Even if it's pressure treated, you need to put a deck seal or something on it every year.
There's one more public works related item, and, John, I passed out to the city council the email we got from Marlon today, and I sent it to you late in the day. Did you see it about the dredging?
No, I did not. Oh, my goodness. That's a long email.
It's actually pretty succinct. It's got those bullet points in there. It's basically what's the status on the dredging, and he summarized it pretty good. But that was just provided to the council as an update on that, because that's one of the important parts of our water and infrastructure.
The key thing he says to you, John, is he says at the end of bullet point 3 that you guys are covering the minor dredging at the end of this year, but that he hasn't heard from you if you need any help on that.
And then I would also, that's for John to think about, but I have a point also in there. If you read, he talks about fast tracking the permitting process and whatnot. I've heard that Val Hoyle is going to be in Curry County, I think, next week. Has anyone heard that?
Yeah.
It's the 6th, I think, isn't it?
And I don't know if anyone will be in the room, but I think that's the opportune time to talk about assistance in fast tracking this type of thing.
We're gonna go, yeah, I'm gonna go.
Okay.
I think I told you, John, and Pat was aware that I worked on a letter to Val's staff when Gary was here, and we drafted a letter to alert her, but then we never sent it because you came on and said, well, wait a second. But I did have a conversation with her staff because of that, so they're aware of it, but there is a draft letter that we just never got around to sending that just alerted them to this crisis situation that we have with our water.
One of the things, I think, Mr. Mayor, I think you had talked about it, if you recall, and Councilman Burns, you were saying about the curtailment and whatnot. Our water situation is affecting our housing. And so I don't know, did your letter, it is
yes,
good.
The letter identified that this was a real emergency and that we actually, I mean, to me, when they say it's going to take us 3 years, story, I feel like we actually have the opportunity to take political action as elected officials to raise the temperature a little bit and to get a little pushy. I mean, we've been waiting for 10 years, and I mean, we're in an emergency situation, and I mean, it makes me feel like we have to get a little pushy on this, and I don't mind doing that in a nice way.
What one or two people in this room can do, you know what I mean? Just a little bit of taking the time to accentuate their point, I guess.
Here's what I'd just like direction on then, and I believe I looked at that letter and I didn't understand how important it was because I was so new. I would say that we just dust off that letter and get it ready to send. If that's something that I can just get, unless there's any opposition, that's what I will work with Councilmember Alexis, and we'll get that done.
Well, Gary and I worked on it. Gary, Pat, and I worked on it, and it was right before Gary left, and Gary thought it was a good idea to send, but then John came on, and then he was new, so it kind of fell through the cracks.
But we might lean a lot on the 6th to what to add to that.
Well, what Gary thought was that it could come from you. It was a letter from
Oh,
you.
okay,
So it was
gotcha.
not like a letter from the whole council. It was just you saying, hey, this is a heads up. We're having a problem. We may need your help later.
Didn't the mayor of Brookings get removed for putting his name on the bottom of the letter? without having it?
Sounds like an easy way out.
I mean, once again, like, back to the black and white.
Yeah, well, so that's what Gary said. I was
No,
asking
no,
him
yeah,
about
then
process.
he knows a lot, like 1,000 times better than
But
me.
if what John is saying is by consensus, we could ask you to send a letter just to alert them.
Perfect.
Well, or prior to the letter, I thought I heard you, Mr. Mayor, say that if you're in person with her, you might glean a little bit of how to, if there's things that would help to be in that letter, that they might say, it would help if this was in the letter. But to just be in the room. Anyway, I guess the idea was that we should approach the representative congressperson when they are here and definitely talk to them person to person about, we cannot wait 3 years. Anyway, so that's, and I was wondering if that's anything I would do, but I would definitely like to just have someone else do it who's more comfortable doing that. Even though I'm comfortable doing it, but I'm the city administrator. I think coming from the elected branch, elected to elected is a nice protocol to follow.
And we could preload that meeting, we could preload the 6th and send that letter out as fast as possible, just to put ourselves on the map, and then ask them, who else should we send it to? Hackman River Finance.
Well, we
Who
have,
else you in favor?
so, and I know Ann's been involved, and then you and I were involved on a call with, Wyden's staff, 2 years ago with Senator Smith. At the time, he was House Representative, but they should get a letter again too. I know I met with Merkley before over here at the town hall, and we discussed that very briefly because, you know, how that's town halls go. But these folks know that we have a problem, but we need to, like you said, present it a little bit. Yeah, turn up the heat a little bit and send a letter to, we should send it everywhere we can. Anybody we think can help us just a little bit.
Because I think, I mean, if we had this permit before 2013, you know, why will it take 3 years to get it back?
It was a staff problem.
Well, how much has the DEQ changed since 2013?
Right.
Regulations and stuff, but they've gone up for,
I think the big crux is going to be, it's for fisheries, it's going to be NIMS, the NOAA fisheries. And whether that was, I think, what stalled us out, is they didn't have staff capacity. So to me, that seems like the kind of thing that an elected official can say, hey, you need to get staff capacity because this community is really struggling.
and can we say we're worried about the habitat because it's so silted in? Like, we're trying to do a good thing for.
Well, you know, and that was one of the biggest portions of that permit. The permit portion of it wasn't too bad, but what the guy from the Corps said was the environmental assessment, because of the fish habitat and the frogs and all that stuff, was going to be the part that would take the longest.
Right. Yeah.
And we had I don't remember, it was probably a year ago or so, we had a conversation with like 5 entities on a phone call with the prior administrator. And we went after the emergency portion of it, and they basically told us no, because of lack of keeping up with it, that we couldn't use that term. And we told them, but we got 2 feet. And they're like, yeah, well, this is the process, you need to go through this process. And that's kind of when the letter got sent. The first letter, there were several letters I think sent, I hope at least, when the prior administrator was here. And the last thing I remember was when we talked with Civil West at the beginning, they said the environmental portion of that permit is going to be the hardest, most expensive part of the permit. But it has to be done, and they require it. So why can't we start that process?
Well, I think we are in a way. But and this email from Civil West, it's the same thing we heard 6 months ago, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
We've known about the restrictions there, but what about the other conversation? What about getting a tank down at the impound or something to trickle into so that we have some sort of a cushion or some other enhancement that gives us more water?
We did. We've been talking about the raw water storage tank up by Union Reservoir. That was like number 1, so that we could do the dredging, and we still had 2 weeks worth of.
Right, and so I think we need to, even if it's a Band-Aid, if we're looking at a couple of years and we can gain a day of water or whatever, I know it helps, and I know it's worth pursuing. I mean, we've talked about it a couple times. That's the problem, is we just need to connect those dots on the possibility of DD Street.
And the cost to get it hooked up, right?
And that's where I'm like, well, what if we could just get a 200,000 gallon tank at the end? You'd still bump the plant, but it would be,
Yeah.
I don't know. Either way, but I'm just saying, there are other options that we talked about that aren't on this email.
Correct.
There's an easier way to say it.
Yeah.
Well, and we also don't have the sense, as you said, this is what we heard 3 months ago. We don't have the sense of when are they going to start doing that environmental review? When are they going to start, so we know that they're making progress as opposed to like not. That's what I want to know.
That could be our fault, because remember, we pulled the streams back because we were burning through hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Well, and this is
But
the
at
other.
that time, we said to focus on that
Right.
too, and
Okay.
they might totally be working on it because it was pretty clear direction. Does the council kind of remember it that way,
Yeah.
Gary and Tim, that if we landed on the impound being?
Oh,
The dredging
yeah, I
permit is
think,
the highest priority.
It was confusing about the tank being ahead of the dredging.
I think Marlin actually suggested to us that the tank go before the dredging.
Yep.
Because the dredging permit could take 3 years. So
That's
I
right.
think that's the way we ended when he got up from the podium and left. So that
There
really
were
was the
two
priority.
options, and I made a motion to accept them both. And then he came back and said that we should
Well-
just do the.
Well, and we gotta remember, we're in a lot of ways, we're starting with a clean slate. Like a lot of history, a lot of stuff has been going on, but we need to regroup, and some of this stuff will just maybe need to not even redirect, but just.
I wonder if when Brian comes down, he's saying he's gonna schedule a time, if we need to maybe make it like more of a workshop, so we can just sit with him and learn more, or, and have John and Brian there and like.
It sounds like he wants to do that in this, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Well, the way I read it.
Or for whoever wants.
We
to
could
do
make
it.
a call to Marlin tomorrow, and me and John could ask these questions and find out exactly where we're at, and then John could relay that, and then, and make sure he has clear direction, because remember, the tank won't come until we get the grant money, because it was millions of dollars.
Correct.
That's not necessarily true. If we come up with a solid project that we can present to Val Hoyle or
Yes,
emergency
right.
or DQ, like just not give us time to get this permit, have an engineer draw up these plans so we can throw a tank down in 6 months.
Well, I think
I'm not familiar with Val Hoyle.
she's our new representative who replaced, Congressman DeFazio.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
she's new,
That would be an opportunity then for funding.
possibly.
Right, like outside,
Okay.
that's what I'm, I guess, trying to get at, is there's options totally outside the permit that everybody knows about, but they're not in this email, and we just need to circle back on it.
Gotcha.
But those are more for like the shovel-ready thing, and I think that's what Marlon was saying, let's get these things shovel-ready. So we just have to make sure that, when we had that meeting, everybody was under the impression that we had like $3 million floating in a cloud, and now we know we don't quite feel that way. So we just need to make sure that we're on the right track with those guys.
Yeah, because they're still surveying the priority ones. I know they were down for, this week, actually twice, to do the, DD Street and one of the other streets. I don't remember what street it was, so I guess we need to call Marlon and just have a quick conversation, find out where we're at, and have we designed the tank, is it gonna be shovel ready? And
Yeah.
Are we
Do
still
you-
going as fast as we can go on dredging?
right.
Do you think, John, I know we've had this conversation before, but if you could clarify, do you think like priority one versus impound, like the dredging permit, that they're both of equal importance, or do you think the dredging permit is a higher priority?
I think the dredging is probably most important, but it's really closely related to our priority one water rights for leak rate.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
we may not have the impound water, but if we can keep that 40% or 24% in the pipes,
Right.
then it's win-win. So,
Yeah.
it's kind of a,
We kind of want them to both go along at the same time.
yeah.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying.
But we really do kind of need to pursue the tank so we have a viable source for when they do the dredging, because it won't be runnable for, could be weeks.
Well, you got like 150,000 gallons a day you're pumping?
Well, we're running 260 a minute.
So a 200,000 gallon tank would do it.
Yeah, 30.
250 obviously would be better, or 300,000, but.
Yeah, 33,000 a foot in the tower, so depending on the size of the tank, that would give you basically 2-3 days, 3.5 days runtime probably.
Right, for pumping or to get back
Right.
online or.
Mhm.
All right, well, we're kind of, I mean, but this is all good conversation. So to get back to the meeting with Civil West, I feel like a workshop right before a decision we need to make, like we always have the meetings where we're having big, long conversations about the things. And then when, it shouldn't maybe be action items, so maybe if we workshop it at like 4, and then start a meeting at 5:30 or something along those lines. Just for these answers that they need, and then we also have to circle back.
Yep, and you're right, this is just a staff report, this isn't a workshop itself, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a very easy way of making staff reports into workshops.
It's always the longest part of the meeting, it seems like.
It is.
Most of the time. But is there any more questions on the public works? We can talk about that at the scheduling of the next meeting. John, I skipped you. I'm sorry, I was looking at John.
Oh, skip me as what?
Administration report.
That's okay. Let me just give you a little bit. The website is ready. We just wanted to wait until the server was in to run it, and I don't know these words so much, but I think it's a kind of a beta test. And we talked about the visitor center. There's a lot going on there. Exterior paint of coat of paint from Public Works, and interior by Main Street. Had a meeting with the occupants of the visitor center, the OSU field station, and Tom Calvinides, I think, and then Susan. Anyway, Susan, I know her last name was. Thank you, everyone. Anyway, and they're talking about getting the people in, and oh, by the way, they're talking about getting volunteers, and so we're going to be using the visitor center for the Jubilee. So we're not going to really open it to the general public, but between Tom and Susan's groups, they're going to have people to staff the visitor center. And so the visitor center should be open again shortly. I'm working on getting the phone working in there, because we picked up the phone like this and it was no dial tone, so I'm working on that.
Are you working on the internet?
That's part of
It's
the-
similar.
I actually have
Yep.
Specifically, I have a personal contact that we should be able, me and John should be able to do that.
Okay.
I had the installer physically walk down with me and looked, and he said that he could personally get that done. Okay, let me chime in for a minute. So we had this internet thing was a nightmare. So we hired Spectrum. We made a deal with Craig Rosenbaum for the hotel to do a repeater because the tribe wouldn't let Spectrum or Ziply dig in the ground. So they came out and they started doing the repeater, and then they called us and they wanted us to install this mass thing to be able to put the antenna on to aim the signal over to the hotel. Well, I went to the visitor center first, and there was a brand new Ziply fiber line already ran to the back of the building in Hanging, which they went aerial all the way down from crazy Norwegians and went to the building anyway. Never told us. So I counseled Spectrum and said, listen, city doesn't want to pay $3,000 for all this stuff because there's already a line there that doesn't make sense. So the guy said, okay, cool. So they put that on hold. I believe they installed some stuff at the hotel.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why, but so now we just need to get. Well, I called Ziply, and they didn't know anything about the line being stubbed out there.
Yeah, he didn't, no, that guy didn't do that. He didn't know that. He just said he could get that line there.
Okay, it's there.
Yeah,
So
that's
we
what I
just
was
need to call
told.
Ziply to hook up.
That's what we
That's
established.
planned for the holiday.
Good. Yeah, so anyway, and thank you. I just want to keep moving on. I appreciate that. We got a what's called land use compatibility statement from a psilocybin mushroom facility. Wants to and it's one of the first steps. The health authority. We don't have anything on our books about these, and the one thing it looks like the state has a state tax on them, similar to the marijuana. I don't know if we have if there's any desire for the city council. We also, technically, I think we have the opportunity to prohibit them. So we haven't done so yet. I just want to let you know that's in the works. No decisions yet, but we probably have time, but unless you want to give direction on any of that stuff.
What is it for? Is it for, but for a farm or for, we did say we wouldn't,
We did nothing.
My understanding was the consensus of the city council was that, so that you wouldn't oppose them and that the state regulations in place would cover the concerns of the council on those establishments. And therefore then, I suppose we could consider me, if you want, you can direct me to look at perhaps a taxing ordinance for whatever transactions go on in there. If that's the will of the
so is it gonna be selling it or growing it or a therapy? I don't.
I think it's
okay.
They call it a service center, I think. So it's kind of, you know, it's a place where people go and yeah. And so then another couple things, I'm going to be working on some code changes. I talked, I think, to a couple of individual council members, but I wanted to approach you. If you recall, last meeting, we had to consider TLT grants. Because we didn't have enough people on the TLT commission, I talked to some individual council members. I said, why don't we add TLT grant review to the Parks Commission's responsibilities? And that way, you know, they would be able to do some things. And it's a similar fund, right? The Parks is funded by TLT. So it seems like it would be a nice fit because we're having an awful hard time coming up with volunteers. If the council doesn't oppose that, I can bring back a code change for that. The next thing is I'm working with Councilman Burns on the code change for Emergency Response Commission. Could not get it in today. Also, I have something for you to look at. I was approached by Charter, and so what I'm handing out right now is other municipalities in the state charge the power company, sorry, I didn't say Charter, I meant CCE. They charge the power company what's called a franchise fee. It's basically a sales tax based on the gross sales of electricity in the community. And this information came to me from CCEC. And so what they are, and what happened was our charter is it's an ordinance, our franchise with them is in an ordinance, and currently, in exchange for their permission to run power through our rights of way, they give us, I think, I'll call it 19 free power poles. And this is a 20-year agreement that's expiring this August. So it's up for renegotiation. The modern version of these is that basically most municipalities just charge a percentage of the gross sales in their community. And the interesting part about that is it's frequently a pass-through. It is mostly a pass-through. It's similar to, if any of you are cable customers, if you see on your cable bill, there's typically, it says franchise fee. That's a tax that goes to the local jurisdiction. So what Charter proposed to us, CCEC said we would, and they just renegotiated with the city of Brookings, and the city of Brookings wanted the whole 5%. So what happened was the CCEC came to Brookings and said, we will pay a 3.5% franchise fee to you, and we will absorb it or socialize it or put it in their whole profit and loss, but they would not charge it to any individual customers. No customer's bill would go up by that 3.5%. And I said, you know, that doesn't sound bad, but for 20 years, I don't know about that. And so I said, can we do some kind of a stair-step program? And so what they proposed is, so a 20-year agreement in 4 or 5 year chunks. For the first 5 years, they would pay us 3.5%. And their sales of electricity in town is about 1.5 million or something like that. So we would, and by the way, but then we would have to pay for the electricity on those light posts that are in us. But our net would be, I think, $30,000 or $40,000 a year of revenue for us. So that's pretty good. But also at the same time, a lot of the cities are saying, well, and so what happened? Brookings says, no, we'll just take 5%. And Charter said, well, then we're going to pass it through to your customers. And
that's what happened.
Yes, and so, by the way, that's an option for this council. And again, you know, everything just keeps going up for us as well. But so what they're proposing now, currently, they said, how about 5 years, 3.5%? We don't charge the customers anything. the next 5 years it's 4%, we'll pay 2, and the customers will pay 2. And the next 5 years it's 4.5%, and we'll pay like 1, and the customers will pay 3 or 3.5 or 1.5. And then the last year it's 5%, and it's all passed through. So the stair step graded it in where at the end we have a 5%. I think that sounds as good as anything. But again, this is the will of the council. You could go with a 20-year agreement at 3.5% the entire time and not have the customers pay, or you could do a stair step, or do what some of these other cities have done and say we want the full 5, and the customers can pass it on through to the customers. So I'm looking for direction to bring something back for the council. We have until August to do this, but I just want you to think about it, and if you have questions for me in charter, or excuse me.
My question would be just the simple math of the breakdown. Like with inflation, would the people be paying the same money over 5 years that they would be with the 3.5% break? Because it's going to be the same money to them, and the city can make more money. Then how does it benefit anybody?
It's less to the consumer, 3.5%, because CCE will absorb it. The customer pays 0.
So I guess that would be my question is, could staff or someone come up with the equation, based off of the CPI, if that is good business? I'm not making sense. I can tell by how John's looking.
Well, I'm trying to track, but is it good business for CCEC?
No, for us like we need to look at the numbers of is 3.5%, like whatever it is, 3.5% for the 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Versus the full 5%, if it changes to where they're charging the people 2% after the 3 years with inflation, it might work out to be the same money. But my brain could be totally wrong on this.
I think you're still going way ahead of me is all. You're gonna have to slow all that down and walk me through it more for me.
This will be a separate charge on your bill. This has nothing to do with inflation on. No, yeah, after 5 years.
We did the step.
But we could do the 3.5 for 20 years and not pass it along to the customers. The customers in Brookings are not happy about this right now. They're PO'd.
But they're PO'd to Scurry Electric, not the city, right?
Well, the city
didn't raise the rates.
But they did. They accepted the contract which allowed the 5%
Right.
increase to go on their bills.
But they didn't raise Coos Curry's rates. Coos Curry raised Coos Curry's rates. All the city did was say, we want 5% like all these other cities across America.
This has nothing to do with rates. This is an additional charge. They're still gonna raise rates in the 5.
Mr. Mayor,
Right.
the franchise fee is imposed by the city. It's a city sales tax on the cost of electricity.
On Coos Curry Electric.
Right, but the law allows them to pass it through to the customers, which they do. And what they're saying is, if Port Orford leaves it at 3.5% and takes the 30 plus or minus thousand every year, then Coos Curry would not charge the Port Orford customers 3.5%. They would what they call socialize it, spread around all the users. So,
right.
but when you say we wouldn't be raising the rates, we would be imposing a franchise fee on CCEC, which the law allows them to pass on to the customers. So
right.
in a way we would be. I think in pretty real sense we would be costing.
Right. Once again, back to my black and white brain.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's actually 49 streetlights that we get for free right now.
Oh, 49?
49. And there's 7 additional, I believe they're ODOT. We haven't confirmed that number yet, which we're paying for. And I think it's about I can't remember now. I think it was $120 a month or something.
And the material they gave me netted that out. In other words, we're getting these free. In other words, we don't pay for the power of these lights that we use. That's where they said, even if you take those back, if they're not free anymore, that's where they netted it out and said you'd be getting close to 30,000 a year, maybe more.
On top, even though we're paying the electric.
Yes, it's a net plus to us. And then the upside of 5% is more than that. But again, so I guess you have 3 options. Really. And you don't have to decide tonight. I just want to let you know this is coming down the pike. If you want to come and meet with me individually, I'd be happy to show you more of the information. But We don't have a ton of time because the franchise expires in August and we have it's like one meeting away. So I just wanted to get this to you in a way that you could talk about it.
Do we have a lot more lights? Other than those
There's
59?
56 total. We're paying for 7 because they were additional
Oh,
to
okay.
the 49, but they also cover all the maintenance light bulb changes.
That might be a little cherry on top. We can talk with them about those. Maybe you could take the other 10 lights for us and we'll be good with it.
I think that one of the things I would like to see us do is get rid of some of the redundant lights now that ODOT is putting in new lights. And I know that this might be a thing to talk to David Johnson about too, because I know maybe it was those 7 additional lights. He was thinking about how much they're going to cost to replace. I mean, he thinks about replacement costs and things through time, so he might have some good insight.
Well, the 7 additional, and I haven't confirmed this 100% yet, but I'm pretty sure they were ODOT lights along 101 during the improvement, right?
Right, yeah.
So that would go to ODOT to pay for. We shouldn't be paying for those because those were required for the ADA improvements to have adequate lighting for.
But part of the deal was we had to pay for replacements. That was part of the deal.
Right.
That, because I remember David specifically saying, we're gonna have to pay for replacements of those 7 lights, so let's.
Well, I think we're paying for them now by paying that $127 a month.
Yeah, right.
Let's just reel it back in. Staff asked for a little bit of direction, and I'm sure we're just confusing it more and more. So we got the 3.5 option, we got the 5% option.
Yeah, it's sort of asking for direction, but we have another meeting before we have to decide, but we don't have a lot of time. So I didn't want to wait to the last minute, and I just want you guys to think on it, and maybe this is something you can go out to talk to people about, and then, and then come back and we can talk about it or make a decision at another meeting.
Without more information, I would recommend 3.5% over 20 years and not pass it on to the consumer. That's my recommendation, but without more information, that's where I'm at.
I recommend 3.5 for 10 years, so we have option to adjust.
It's just that I did read a lot of the Brookings, a lot of the people are very unhappy about it because their bill got tacked on 5%.
I'd be curious to know what Brookings pays for their rates compared to us, if we all have the same rate throughout CCC or not.
If we're in the same county, our rates would be the same structure. I'm almost sure, but without checking, I don't know.
I had a conversation with Gary about it, and the reason he was such an advocate, because he was the one who negotiated 5%, is he felt like the city didn't have the revenue to hire the people they needed to hire, and that, kind of like the citizens had to, that if we want to have good staff and good people, that we kind of have to get in line. And if you look on the next page, other cities are charging 7%. And so he was kind of going from, we can't go along with this fiction that we can let CCEC work for free without having the city get some benefit. So that was his perspective, I thought it was interesting.
Well, good. So kind of ruminate on that, and I'm available for more in-depth discussions. But now I also have one thing. I had a meeting with our insurance agent, a woman named Kristen from Jewel Insurance Agency, and she came in and she wanted me to sign up to renew our property and liability insurance for a $78,000 premium per year, and I didn't feel like I had a $78,000 signature authority. Pretty sure I don't. And then I also said, don't, because I've been in a lot of meetings where the agent usually presents to the elected officials the options on insurance and whatnot. And I said, aren't there options and things like that? And she said, oh, yeah, there are. So we do have some options. And so this is one where I am going to ask you to make a choice today, and I'll have a recommendation, but because we have to renew by the end of the fiscal. So I felt that, yep, I know, yeah.
So this woman just thought she would contact us a couple days before we have to.
Well, actually, from my understanding is management has always worked that way with this person and signed the renewal. So if you have any specific recollection of ever voting on an insurance renewal.
I don't.
Yep. So, but I just felt like my experience is my electeds has usually done this. And then also I just don't believe I have $78,000 buying authority. So it's a $78,000 commitment.
Yes, in my
Budgeted?
experience, insurance agents do usually do a presentation. It kind of fizzled out a little bit with COVID, but still,
How much, my personal insurance, I get 2 months in advance took over. It says right on it, this is not a bill.
and the flip side of it is we did budget for that. Like we budgeted that line item.
Yeah.
You're not spending outside of the budget.
That's
So,
correct.
I mean, to me, if it was something over $10,000 that wasn't on the line item is when you would need to come to us for that. But, and they should have done their presentation 4 months ago before we had our budget cycle, and then like we're just kind of up against it right now.
Is that above where it normally is? Did it go up?
No, it went up slightly, but that's not, I don't want to get bogged down on that, but really, and it was a zero deductible was also the idea there. And so really where our options are is selection of deductible, and then they present to you some statistical kind of actuarial analysis of what your savings could be over a period of 10 years. And so if we were to, and it might not even be worth the trouble, but if we were to have a $5,000 deductible over 10 years, our savings would be $30,000. So, $3,000 a year. But still, it's money, and it's $3,000 a year. That's, I think, is legitimate to consider. And if we did a $2,500 deductible, it would be $17,000 a year. And if we did a $10,000, and also our loss history is not that bad. Yes, so a higher deductible is a better idea.
What was the $10,000? You did mention the 5 and the 25. Can we get the $10,000
Yep,
figure?
and I have to go look at my notes there, and it might be at my desk. Let me just walk up there.
Okay, if anybody has to stretch their legs.
Yeah, do you want to do a recess? Thank you, Mayor.
So, and?
No, it's great.
So, I asked my secret source at CCE. Yeah, everybody pays the same electrical kilowatt rate. But this is, that's what. Yeah, I just had to. Yeah, well. Hey, that's specifically about booking. And I was like, okay, so that's something I didn't know. I read the details, like, sure you don't.
Well, yeah, one of those things, there's nothing we can do, we're up against it. No, that's our, my policy like 2 months out. No, I mean, there's probably plenty of people that, is in the mailbox.
That's true. My idea about, oh, God.
How you doing?
Yes, I don't think it's done improperly. There's no reason in the world why that should fall apart. I mean, I think nobody had trucks and stuff going over that thing for the last 12 days right now. There's a lot going on.
I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
It was started out with the 7th grade.
Yeah.
But like one of the Logan games, you get it from.
What about this bridge that's
Different lifestyles, different kids. Some like to do that.
Some I know that want to do it.
Right.
But that was a grant.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
I get me jobs. We got money for hiring kids. Okay, let's get with it here. I mean, yeah, I think $6 a day and $50 an hour. Yeah. $3.50 out there, I gotta say. There's a few other things that are trails around. All I have to say is no, or something, yeah, it's a match. And all that stuff ends up in Jewish. You got to take Jewish for plastic Jewish. We did it at the beach. We got all the plastic right in the bottom. We did it with the toilet in there for decades. We sucked all that out. A lot easier to do it, got through as a kid, you know. I don't get it. Compared to what these guys get to do. I expect it. Well, I want to be noxious.
Oh, yeah.
We like so many, I look at these planters. They have to do a seed, you know what I mean?
The course is just beginning.
A little bit before that, I see.
Across the street from the alley.
Forward.
Yeah.
Yours outfield. Yeah, the tractor went in the middle, like it missed the but it didn't just.
The tractor broke down. That all, that's, I don't know. It would be good to have an ordinance.
Yes.
And the city would need to.
Respond to its problem.
Yeah.
But it should be.
It's all over the right.
I haven't seen much for you, where's that? Well, those guys agree. And it, you know, see where they were.
Can't park all those cars. You can't have the walkway without,
You know?
ramp people up and down wheelchairs. You see that?
What's it just, you know?
Somebody else is in there now.
How does the plan?
Well, maybe the times change. I guess sometimes we ask the right person.
The speed that these guys are going back. You know, how extensive, that's just several reasons. That kills something. Yeah.
We had, I think some issue with soap and stuff.
No, I know, I tried.
We still have the whole recipe thing, my brother.
Salt and, I'm not sure.
You put it straight.
Well, it might be, like, I might be.
It is historical.
Something nice, you know?
Yeah.
And that is one of the nicest bathrooms, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're on. We got one more day left. It's gonna be at the port. We're at the port.
Good. Thanks, David.
We could maybe have 45 minutes.
I forgot about
That's amazing. I didn't know.
Good wrap this up. I got Chinese food coming from the end here soon. Let's go. The wife called. She said, "Hey, you want Chinese?" I said, "Heck yeah." I haven't had that in a long time.
Bring enough to share.
Right? Right? Yeah, we'll take 12 orders of egg rolls. Oh, yeah.
Like that one? Okay. So it's kind of one of the. I like that one. It's just such a.
Well, Tim, I thought I had all these with me, so
I would have been, I should have been prepared. Yeah. Yeah. No, especially with our loss history. No, this is a liability.
Oh, gotcha. That's basically in the personal insurance and property.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, that's one of the words.
No, but not till 2026. I think, is it 26?
Gary.
No, it's special machine.
This time of year, it usually comes
We're getting close to it, like things are lining up.
after a long winter.
Yeah.
There were a lot of.
Ups and downs this week, but
Oh,
mostly up.
man, I didn't get nervous. Yeah.
I'm glad we're not open.
I think whatever you're ready.
Okay. Greg stepped out for a minute. but
Oh,
he said
okay,
he'd be-
sorry.
Yeah, he said he'd be right back, so. What's up, Joseph?
No, just standing.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine. I was just, you were looking at me like something was up.
I was just looking in your direction, not at you.
We're gonna reel this back in. Yeah, but he's done now, so. I'm gonna miss the gavel.
I was always scared of that thing.
I did
It was
notice
gonna fly off.
the last meeting.
Okay, so we are back from our recess, 7:05. So real quick, everybody, can I get consensus to put this insurance issue on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We're good to go now. Sorry, I was bugging you during the break.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that's fine, yeah, I should have done that too, but, anywho, so, the guy who always stumps me, Councilmember Pudwitz, asked me for some stuff, and I thought I had it, I didn't, so, I know, but no, I'm joking, respectfully, he's always asking me good questions, and I should have had this with me, I thought I did, I only had 3 sheets. So the $10,000 a year deductible, would save us, $41,400 over 10 years. And they even had a $25,000 option that would save us $67,600 over 10 years. And I think that one is pretty tricky, because I think our loss history is really good, but I think one of the worst losses we had is like around the 20,000 amount. So that's a real exposure we could, but 10, I think, anyway, so my recommendation would be the $10,000 deductible, where we'd save 41,000 over 10 years. I think $10,000 is a reasonable amount for us to absorb in a loss situation. This is not for vehicles, this is for a liability thing. So, but if you want to go with the 0 deductible and we go 78, that's okay.
Zero was 78, what's the 10,000 for the payment?
Well, good. So it would be roughly down 4,000 a year, so it'd be down about 74 or so.
So just to get the conversation started and streamline the meeting as possible, I would entertain a motion to accept the 2023-2024 insurance contract with Jewel with a $10,000 deductible. Like I say, just to start the conversation, but I would entertain that.
I would make a motion to accept.
You can't say so moved if you like that.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
I wasn't trying to say you needed to make that, but you.
No, that's perfect. I like that, so.
Now, I have a question. Can we renegotiate each year?
Boy, we have a new stumper, because I don't know the answer to that question.
I mean,
So when you're.
Does this come, does the insurance come every year, so we could change the deductible next year?
If we thought about it ahead of time and wanted to do research or looked into another.
Well, or we decided that we're getting more lawsuits and we needed to zero deductible.
You know, it doesn't say we can't, and, you know, it doesn't say we can't, but you know, if you try to think about it from the insurance company's point of view, okay, so you suffer a big loss and go, well, that was a mistake, I want to have a zero deductible. Your loss frequency, you know, you're playing the numbers, the wheel doesn't come up, if you're not, anyhow, I think you're tracking, so my hunch is they would allow us to pay more premiums after a loss, would be, and I don't have any information here that it's prohibited. And I think that the 10 years was just to give us some kind of a meaningful number, because, you know, if you say four, you know, anyway, I think that was the idea there.
So if we have a claim against us, it's gonna, for 20,000, we're gonna have to pay 10.
Yeah.
Got it. So it will be costing us $6,000 the very first claim. We're saving 4,000 a year.
Yeah, right.
So the very first claim, it's gonna cost us $6,000 more than we budgeted for this.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, that's, just on the very first claim, let's say it's a $20,000, you know, thing, the very first claim, we're now over budget for our insurance.
And I think one thing that might have got crossed up is John came to us with, if we go with this deductible, we'll save this much over 10 years.
Yeah, the
Which
10
that
years
10
is cool.
years had, you know, that's just what we would say, but we're not locked into a contract. Insurance is a yearly thing that we can.
Yeah, if somebody breaks their head open at 4th of July next week, you know what I mean, the very first thing, we're gonna lose $6,000 on this, by doing it.
But that's the gamble. That's just, you know, yeah, you risk the 6, but you make the 40 on the other end. If we're playing poker, I'm good with that all day long, but we're not. It's,
What is our loss history? What's it like?
In 2012-13, we had 0. 2013-14, we had 0. 2014-15, we had 858. 2015-16, 0. 2016-17, 0. 2017-18, 0. 2018-19, 0. 19-20, 0. 2021, 0. 21-22, 0. 22-23, 7,500. Now, there's something interesting about that, because it may be that I don't, the insurance company, I believe, calls a loss when they even put a reserve on a claim, and a reserve is an amount they set aside to pay a doubtful and disputed claim. So I'm not even sure we realize that, but they kind of countered as that, and I didn't get exactly what that 7,500 was about. So,
Does anybody know?
do you have any recollection of? Okay, it may be a claim is set up and there's a reserve, and I can find that out.
what year was it?
This year.
Current fiscal. Yeah, and I mean, did we, sometimes there's car accidents, those kind of things, but,
I don't remember anything.
yeah. Well, you know, I don't want to say anything, but you might not have been told.
Yeah, so the way I kind of look at these things, I mean, I've been here 19 years and paid insurance on all my vehicles. I've never made one claim. So I like the gambling aspect, but we are gambling with the city's money.
I know,
There's
and
no doubt about it.
And just having this conversation really ups the chances that something.
Well,
happens.
yeah, but if you look at it that way, when's the last time you filed a claim against your insurance company? Have anybody here filed one against them?
And, you know, you talk about gambling, and gambling is in one sense a numerical or statistical analysis where the house always wins. But in this case, the statistics show, you know, that if we have a $10,000 deductible, we'd save $41,000 over the, you know, so you can call it a gamble, but it's actually going with the numbers.
It's just giving ourselves a backdrop in case we get into big trouble, then we have a backdrop, and so that's what we need it for.
I see on our history.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, our history is what, if we were a bigger city, there would probably be more stuff to do, but.
So there was a motion, but I don't know.
I'll second it.
We had-
Oh, you guys second it, correct?
Okay, yeah, is there any other discussion on the motion to accept the contract with Jewel with the $10,000 deductible? Okay, I'll call for the vote then. Councilor Burns.
Yes.
Councilor Petty.
Yes.
Councilor Hogwarts.
Tim, yes.
Councilor Delices.
Yes.
And Councilor Rath.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm pretty sure that's all I had.
Thank you, John.
Yep. Okay, is there any other reports that, okay, so I see mayor's report here, but we still, under considerations, we still have citizen councilor mayor, I would imagine. Would be, okay, go ahead.
Well, I can't finish without saying thank you to all the members of the council who cleaned up the town, and also Dave McCutcheon's here. He's organized kids to clean the town. I think the town looks as good as I've seen it. ODOT came through today with their street sweep, but I really think, again, a testament to the good people of this town who pulled together. I saw different generations, I saw different organizations. Main Street really spearheaded it. Some Rotary guys were out there, but I had store owners, shop owners, and again, David Cutchin here with his group of kids that he got with the ESD. Again, I'm really happy to be part of the Port Orford community and the organization. I get goosebumps talking about it. It was just it's great to drive down and see. We got the best looking stretch of 101 on the coast, I think, honestly. So anyway, thank you to everyone who did it. So really, and I know Gary, you and me probably passed each other a couple times out there, but I think everybody did a little bit.
And again, thank you to Public Works as well. For
Yes.
all they do. They're always in the parks, they're always in the streets.
Yep.
They're picking up stuff that we don't want to touch.
And I didn't mention the Jubilee. I didn't mention the Jubilee in there, but by the way, Joseph Harrison was also out there on Saturday, and I sang the Jubilee. We're doing great. So again, I think this 4th of July I'm really excited about the 4th. So I think it's shaping up really good. So, anyway, sorry, that's all I had.
Good, yeah, sorry, I should have asked if you were.
No, I thought I was.
Okay, any questions on the finances? Well, like I say, we can hit that up at the regular meeting when those are out. Public Works, Police, Planning, Mayor's Report. When do I want to talk about that? I don't really have anything to report, so I'll wait for the comment section. Liaison reports, you guys good with just wait until the regular meeting on that unless
I have
something is
one thing
pressing?
that's
Go
gonna
ahead.
be related to the loan thing, so I can
Right.
wait and talk about it now.
Yeah, wait, and we'll talk, I'll let you. Because we are moving into that, if there is no other questions or departmental. Okay, so we're gonna move into old business, 7A, resolution 2023-13, approving loan agreement with acquire watershed property and partially rehabilitate same. Authorizing city administrator to execute as necessary. Any discussion on this or comments, Ann?
Well, I wanted to just mention this really exciting thing, which is the legislature just passed a bill that may allow us in the future to apply for a grant to get further forgiveness on this loan.
Good.
So we are going to get half forgiveness right now, which means we're getting an $800,000 piece of land for $400,000, and in the future, once they figure out the program, that might happen. So anyway, that's pretty cool.
Oh, if I may, someone asked me, again, I'm a latecomer, but somebody told me we had 2 loans, and it's kind of related to what we're talking about here, but we have 2 outstanding loans with the USDA, or bonds with the USDA on an outfall. Someone said one of those outfalls was destroyed, and that's why we needed the other one. Someone said, can we get loan forgiveness on the loan we're paying for the outfall that was destroyed? And that's a USDA. Is this a state law you're talking about?
Yeah, this is a new state law that has to do with watershed protection, which is exactly what our city has pioneered. And the legislators said, well, gosh, we don't want to penalize the communities that have already been leading. Let's help them too. So that's cool.
We have asked for loan forgiveness on that outfall, at least 2 times that I'm aware of, and there's nothing preventing us from asking again.
But it doesn't, I've heard, I mean, I've asked for, I've heard that they just say no.
Well, they do, but it's still, you know.
It wasn't that one of them almost got paid, is almost paid off, right, wasn't that?
Gary was along on that.
Oh,
It was
okay.
just the final payment for the year.
Okay.
'Cause I think the other one's the wastewater treatment plant upgrade in 2005, maybe.
Didn't he say it was still just like 2 years, 2 more years or something left over? One of them?
2005, that would make sense.
It's either 2005 or 2015. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know it's quite a bit of money left. They come down every year to inspect it.
Okay.
That's how.
You know.
That's good, though.
That's really good news, though, man, thank
Yeah,
you.
so anyway, that's just like, you know, we just found, Linda and I just found out yesterday, and it was like, oh my gosh. So they're gonna have to do a rulemaking, and the process is gonna have to unfold, but the people who have partnered with us all along, told us they would keep us posted and are rooting for us and would help us if we can do it, so that's exciting.
Thank you.
So, and just because you've been so close to this is, I mean, what major changes as this contract has grown? Like, I didn't see any major changes other than kind of.
I think this is just a total boilerplate thing, and if you go through all the language, you know, it's kind of a long thing that's pretty boilerplate. It gives the loan schedule that we're gonna be paying, which is about $18,000 a year in 2 payments. And the only concern is that, you know, John has done a really good job of recognizing that, sounds like as he described, DEQ wants to have parity with our other bonds, and that there's just some little technical thing to work out there, but to get the legal opinion. But it just, you know, it's just a matter of getting that clear, and the steps are that we pass this resolution, John gets the legal opinion, we need to send it in to DEQ by August 1st is the deadline, but we really need to get it in earlier because we've entered into a purchase agreement with the Conservation Fund with a closing date at the end of August, so we really need to kind of move. And I think we're ready to go. As soon as we do this and you get the legal thing, I think we can send it to DEQ and they will pretty much send us the money. And do we need to open an account, or did Gary already do that, or do you know that piece? This reserve account, that may be one little detail we need to track down. So we're ready. It's just that we can do it.
It might be an LGIP account too, like and then they just do the automatic transfer.
Yeah.
I'll find out. I got the sense that they're like almost writing us a check, but it makes sense that it would be a transfer, and they would just ask us where we wanted to transfer. And I think what Ann's talking about would be a special set aside. And by the way, I have to talk to David Johnson again, because I think Ann mentioned during the budget part that this loan was not included in our budget, because of the prior budget, I think had it in, but nobody really, anyhow, we may have to come back and do a budget adjustment to include the receipt and the in and out, but it is a grant, and David explained there's some exceptions to grants on budgets, so anyhow, we may have some future activity on this, in that regard, but that kind of goes to where it goes when we receive it, and do we create a special, just basically a one-off account for this money in road?
And that's what they require, I believe, John, so you can talk to that guy.
And that, I think road would be happy to set up a new account.
I think that we should look into the LGIP angle though, because that is a lot of the way that they do fund it, and if we can keep it in an LGIP account, and if the more money we can keep in our accounts, the more pennies we get on the interest, and that's why I think it might be an LGIP account that it gets transferred.
Yeah, they have a very specific thing that they require, and so we just have to figure out what that is.
And not just that, this would be in and out of LGIP pretty darn quick is the way.
Oh, that's true, right.
We're just gonna, as soon as we get it.
Interest isn't too much of
that.
And that was what was so weird about the last budget, is we actually have the money in the budget to buy this land. But we don't need the money in the budget to buy this land, we just need sort of an empty space in the budget to get the money. And then, so.
Any other questions on resolution 2023-13? Thanks for clarifying that there was no major changes, and it was reviewed by Shayla, obviously. Just throw that out there.
So we ready for?
Yeah,
No, we're always ready. Anytime you want to make a motion, you
Can I
are
take-
wide open.
Can I make a motion? I'd like to make a motion that we approve, where is it? Okay. That we approve resolution 22313, approving the loan agreement with DEC to acquire the watershed property and partially rehabilitate it, authorizing the city administrator to execute.
Any other discussion? Okay, we'll call for a vote. Counselor Palacios.
Yes.
Counselor Pawis.
Tim, yes.
Counselor Burns.
Yes.
Counselor Tidy.
Yes.
And Counselor Rath.
Yes.
All right.
Just like that.
Yeah, easy. And it just goes, since Linda is here, of course, we have to acknowledge this, all the work that's gone into this. And once we get it all the way done, I think we have to celebrate in some way. So we'll figure
Thank
it
you,
out.
Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, thank you. Okay, old business 7B, resolution 2023-14, resolution ratifying budget amendment to forest management planning grant agreement U22011.
I make a motion that we approve resolution 2023-14, resolution ratifying budget amendment to forest management planning grant agreement U22011.
Second that.
Any discussion?
Just say that we found out that we had even more money than we thought we would have in this thing, and so at the last minute, we managed to buy even more equipment and supplies to do stewardship, so that's cool.
And signs for outreach.
It's nice for us.
Where will all that equipment be stored at? With you guys?
We don't have that figured out yet,
Okay. just ask.
but I remember that you offered the baseball.
Yeah,
shed.
there's the dugout, so that's the concession stand that's back there. That's a good place for the park, so we might be able to have some stuff.
Well, and if we have a couple needs for a storage shed, we might want to consider getting.
Yeah,
a storage
exactly.
shed.
Well, that's pretty secure, if I remember.
Yeah,
correctly.
the concession stand place is pretty secure.
Right.
Real heavy door on it.
And it looks, yeah, well, I mean, they keep candy in there, have
It's been years.
It was a really good idea, because I think Linda brought up the idea that it needs to be plugged in, and so it's a good idea, I think. But, John, obviously you'll have input on that.
I broke my rule and made a joke with motion on the table, sorry. Right, any other discussion on the motion? Any other discussion on 2023-14?
Nope.
Okay, I'll call for the vote then. Counselor Rath?
Yes.
Counselor Tidy?
Yes.
Counselor Burns?
Yes.
Counselor Pogwitz?
Tim, yes.
And Counselor Palacios?
Yes.
Okay, so in the future, when we do add things to the agenda or whenever things come up, we will just stick another new business to make it easier on Joseph. Like anytime we decide to do that, we will say, okay, it now becomes new business 7A. I thought about that halfway through, Joseph, I'm sorry. But, yes, so no continuing action items, you got your direction you needed for the insurance and the franchise fee. Considerations, do we have any, public considerations?
Yeah. I was recommended I get a title from this crew. Whereas we might be trying to extend it, or the budget, excuse me. So this crew, these guys.
Go ahead and say your name.
Dave McCutcheon, I'm with the lady from Youth Transition Program, YTP, who works for Doug Brookings, who works for the Educational Service District, and money actually comes from originally vocational rehab, is my understanding. And it was a grant that had to be spent. They had money on the books. They wanted to spend it by the end of the month, and so that's why we're knocking it down. We started out with 7 kids, and we're down to 5. But anyway, we've got one more day left tomorrow before the end of the month, and so the kids get $50 an hour. So it's pretty cool. And we'd like it's done, and lots getting done. And but I was planning on doing this whole week. We did the cleanup for the street instead of going after the stockroom problem in town, and we actually have 4 little bit horse over here. And Gary's pointed out there's some more horse. So we do have a horse thing. We have some horse before sport, and we have some horse behind Dollar General. And so we cleaned up the Dollar General lot today, or yesterday, too much of a hassle to ask for dough for it, but we've got lots of donations from the, Gold Beach Lumber and Lances and anyways, stuff, there's some local stuff back. Anyway, so these are the ideas, and if this works, I'm basically, for the main chunk of the funding, I'm gonna go after, TTR, because their place is a complete mess out there, and I know they want it cleaned up, and I haven't been able to pull it off, but I know they want to do it, so that's who I think is gonna step up. And then also, there's potential for fishing game, I know quite a few people fishing. And they have a problem with the fish on their Coquille River, but that's a different, more complicated thing. So anyways, it's the Ocean Pollution Prevention League or the Invasive Species Reduction Team. We're not quite sure yet, but those are some names that were pitched. And we would be looking for a letter of endorsement from the city if we come to that, if we actually get a nonprofit or something along that nature. Just explore the idea. Any recommendations, please. Like John had the weed printout thing from the weed people, and weed control people I've got to again. And so there's nickels out there for this kind of thing. It appears. And the ESB wants to hire me to do this thing, but they were just too clear near the end of the year for their fiscal year also. So anyways, that's what I came to tell you guys about, and that I'm having so much fun. I'm going to try and get people pedals.
Nice.
Very cool. Thanks, Dave.
See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody online? Like nobody online, so I think we're gonna be done with public comment at this point. Since we have the public, staff considerations? Joseph, John, Joseph, John. My name is.
Sounds very biblical.
Sounds official.
My consideration is, we are basically at the 2-hour mark, so.
Well, remember, we have to talk, I want to talk to you guys about the labor negotiations, an exec session. Okay.
So I guess, yeah. Well, just to finish out considerations, any council considerations?
I just have one, or actually I have two. I mentioned to some of you guys that there was this really this letter to the editor of the newspaper that was quite incendiary, that I think totally misrepresented a conversation we had at the last meeting, and in particular, misrepresented things that I said. It's really kind of weird. Sort of like an alternative universe scenario. I went back and looked at the thing, and it's pretty weird. But anyway, I personally feel like I am compelled to have to write a response to this. And I tend to think of us as a team. And so I just wanted to, I trust that you guys would feel okay with me setting the record straight. I will be doing it on my basis because I was particularly called out, even though I think both the conversation was misrepresented in general. But I just wanted to tell you that because, as I said, I kind of think of us as, a team, and I don't usually just write letters to the editor about what I think. But so
are you going to write that as a counselor or as a citizen?
I'm going to write as a counselor because I was criticized as a counselor for saying things that I didn't say.
You should check with Shayla first, just a recommendation.
Okay, well, I was going to maybe check with Dawn first.
Well, and she kind of did. I said she should check with you all just as a courtesy. Yeah.
Well, I'm just going by past experiences. Shayla has always told us pretty much not to respond as a counselor. This is a little bit different though. So that's why it was just a recommendation.
It's just, okay, well, thank you. Yeah. It's just so, like anybody who would listen to it, I know Liz listened to it, I listened to it.
I agree with you 100%, but I always respect what Shayla has to say. She may just say it's fine, but in the past, she's always told us not to respond as a counselor.
Okay.
But it's usually on an opinionated subject.
Yeah.
It's a little, it is a little different.
And hearings and this,
yeah, it is a little bit different what you're involved in.
Okay.
But at the same time, I guess what I'm sort of hearing Ann say is she will be representing herself as a council member, but not representing the city council. And that's the thing.
Yeah, because that's the head right there is Ann Velisis, city councilor, is a statement. Not Ann Velisis, city council.
The reason I know so much about this is I wrote a letter to Matt one time, a citizen, Tim Pogwitz, many years ago. Matt chose to add Port Orford City Councilor to my letter, which I didn't send in. And I was kind of reprimanded for it, even though I didn't do it. So anyway, I'm just giving you advice.
Okay.
One nice thing in your letter is there's literally a recording of the meeting to reference if anyone has, you know what I mean? It's not a.
The person, if anyone wants to read it, because it really misrepresents it. The person
I will
says,
read it.
go to, look at the website, wait till you see what she says. And then you go and look at it and you think, that was my experience.
And I was a little bit nervous as well, because, you know, I put out press releases, and it's, I thought my comment was fair and reasonable, and said, you know, council member analyzed this question, whether our rates were effective in preserving our most precious resource, water, something like that. And I thought that was a pretty neutral, fair statement, and I was wondering if it was me who got Ann in the hot water, but I can't connect the dots, but I have the same feelings, you know, how strange it is that that's a reaction to that comment, so.
Anyway, so.
That's always the question in my mind, or every day, actually, I'm telling myself, don't look at the internet anymore. But like, don't respond, because, you know, but at least the newspaper is a little bit different, because it's just two statements.
Apparently was stated on Facebook too, so I have not responded to that, but I feel inclined to set the record straight in the newspaper. So.
Yeah, no, nobody should, you should be happy, nobody's really about Facebook stuff.
You should have a Bible in high school.
And just, okay, one other little.
Yeah, no,
thing I
yeah,
just mentioned
you
is,
said too, yeah.
you know, we have all these new ODOT bump outs, sidewalks and everything, and I just wanted, I know Pat has brought this up before, that there are, curbs that are raised, and I actually witnessed a bicycle, like, hit one, and the person go tumbling over, and I know you've been raising that question, and I don't know, John, if you have any concerns about that, or you do, or do we need to talk to ODOT about smoothing down the backsides of those curbs, or not ODOT, and Tidewater people? It just seems like.
No, it's ODOT. It's ODOT
has nothing to do with it.
Okay.
They are strictly following the contract that they bid on and won. I've had many conversations, I'm spending a lot of time involved in those circles over the water lines and detail.
Oh, right, yeah.
I think that sometime maybe in our workshop, we need to sit down and draft a letter to ODOT with our concerns, especially at 11th Street by the Battle Rock. It's not 11th, is it? No.
South of the school.
The one just by the Legion Hall Community Hall.
Yeah.
That one sticks out almost 8 feet from the end of the fence. And there was a lady, I've had 3 phone calls on it, and I got the number from ODOT to pass to them with the planes. She might thought 2 tires and rims on it. There's marks all over it. People loved it.
I thought the one by the bike shop was a practical joke.
I did too. It's like the island at Ocean View. To me, that was horrific, and why is it there?
Oh my God.
But these are the things that we need to sit down, draft a letter, and specifically point out the ones that are of concern to the community. Some of that stuff, the one at 11th Street, what I was told by the ODOT inspector was, that was added. So that wasn't in the original plan that we saw. And there's 2 or 3 things that have been added because somebody had a great idea and said, well, we should do this extra extension, right? So those are the things we could probably address.
Well, and there was minutes of the meetings, and no one, like, there were specific questions of, oh, do you want the bump outs? Do you want raised things? And I kind of remember, no, the place we want raised things is at the crosswalk for the school. They didn't, I am pretty sure that I would have noticed curbs or raised sidewalk. All we saw was a bird's eye view over GIS of what they were going to do.
Somebody told me they were just coming out and having to do a trailer, or to pull a trailer out near Salty Dog, and they had to like literally go into the other lane.
You have to, we can't make that corner with our truck either. We have to come down the road and the drone and go straight across the highway. We cannot swing that without being all the way over by the 15th Street's another prime example. There's truck marks all over that island because they can't make that corner to get to that gas station.
So we should definitely do that before this project is finished. Maybe that should be a priority.
I did. Go ahead, John. It takes somebody with like horsepower.
It seems like if they were, some of them were.
No, we're doing side combos here. What were you guys talking about? We want to know.
It's just basically, I think everybody has a problem like that's just brought up.
Well, the flashing lights, the flashing lights was the school and Battle Rock, and now all of a sudden it's Salty Dog. It was all 3.
Are they doing one so Rock?
There's all three, yeah, there's three, Jefferson Crossing, Madrona-ish, and then, the school.
We were hoping, so the thinking was that in town, we were hoping that flashing crosswalk would help slow people coming into town. But I've heard the same stories. The one at the school, Krista ran into and popped a tire on her car. But if you really look at it, it's parking up against that fence. You shouldn't really be driving in that portion of the road. But
That's correct.
But, you know,
unprotected blind curve.
The one at Ocean View Street, that I always
That one I
go
don't-
the back
I
way
don't
and turn,
understand.
and I, like, in 100 Court, I go the other way, so I maybe foresee some problems with like. So what were you gonna say, John?
Well, I met with Scott, I think he's a local guy that.
I think he's Mike's, but this is a different apartment that's on this ADA stuff.
Well, I don't know, he seemed to know a lot about it, and I told him we're just gonna stencil the 800 number on the curb. And then, he said they're becoming aware of it, and what he told me is they're thinking of installing some of those, I said, well, can you at least move that stop sign out away from the fence? Because I asked if that was their stop sign or our stop sign, he says it's their stop sign, the one by the Legion Hall. Because usually when people are driving, you want that stop sign right at your finger almost, and that's where you stop at. So I said, at least, and he says they're gonna try to look at some of those white, posts that you've seen that are kind of, and then they're looking at reflective stickers and stuff like that. So we haven't seen the end of it. So they're cognizant of the problems. I told them, I said, we're just gonna paint the 800 number on curves and tell people to call, so.
I'd like to see if we can undo some of the damage.
I've heard that is like apparently a last resort, where it's apparently it's not part of it. I asked that and he said, I think that was something he could not talk about or something, I don't know what it was, but that didn't go anywhere when I talked about that.
Well, I asked him that, I told him we'd wait till they were done, then we'd cut that blind back curve off, and they said, well, you'll probably have a state police show up and arrest you.
Yeah, no, it's,
So are we clear on what is that? Is that stub out there in case we decided to go with a sidewalk down that?
That's for cars not to cut the lanes.
Speaking of the Mac companies?
Yeah.
They had
which stub out?
The one by the school there along the fence.
Yeah.
I mean, it's somebody's gonna get seriously hurt.
Yeah, I almost wrecked hard on my bike.
If somebody's already seen someone go head over heels on a bicycle,
And that
there's already
gentleman,
one person real life.
that gentleman who had that happen to, I was with some people, we ran over to help him. He was actually a homeless person. He said it's the second time it happened to him. And then Linda just told me she saw somebody on a wheelchair that was having trouble actually getting up one of the ramps.
There's our insurance claim that we just talked about.
It's not us.
That's not us,
that's ODOT, 100%.
So that's the question I was having, is it ODOT or where is the line? It's totally
It's all about, yeah, so and I think they're kind of figuring it out, because it all seemed like a big surprise to them. I know.
That's ironic, because I've been calling them for like 6 months.
Well, I heard, so I don't know where I heard this, but I heard somebody had contacted ODOT, and ODOT said, no, that's your problem now, or something. But, which isn't really the way.
I had not heard that from anyone.
Okay, well, maybe it was a rumor then, but anyway, that's not really the way it works.
I'm interested, Tim. I mean, I am interested in this idea of what did you guys approve compared to what we got?
Well, we proved what was explained to us, and we did see plans, but I don't recall seeing a plan of a wall this tall stubbed out halfway. I mean, realistically, in this one location, it's not in a lane, but it's in a bad area.
It's a safety hazard.
Major safety.
It's a major safety hazard.
Oh, it is, there's no doubt in my
It's
mind.
so ridiculous, and, of course, I did battle with them on safety with lighting, and they were, safety, and then,
Every single one of them.
Well, so maybe we're thinking it, and we could say, could you guys, you're making your plans, could you call ODOT and paint the curves that are problems yellow at least, like, in the easy mark?
No, I don't know if we are overthinking it, but somebody mentioned about our claims and I said, it's all ODOT, and someone said, no, it isn't, and there may be, I wonder if sticking our insurance company on them would get any results.
Because
So,
if we approve
Yeah.
it and then we're paying for the lights, I mean, that were added, I mean, maybe there are components of it that are ours. It should be.
I'll talk to our insurance company about it.
What, yeah, we'll verify that, but I think I have a set of the original plans,
Oh.
and if 11th Street wasn't on those plans, then we should be able to have it removed, because what we approved was what we had for plans.
Right, and we did that at some point, what was it, probably 3 years ago now, we saw decent pictures of what was gonna happen.
I've still have it.
Yeah, I think it would be great to look at that. I would be interested to see.
Because it wouldn't be
what it was,
too hard
have
to
John look
see
at
the
it.
difference with what-
Yeah.
going on.
Is that, I mean, just to actually witness it, and it was so funny, Pat, because you've been saying it for months, and then all of a sudden I was there and I saw it, and I thought, oh my God, I have to be here.
No, nobody's heard yet. So is there any other council consideration? I got one mayor consideration to consider. I hate bringing back things that we made decisions on. I remember when we did it maybe a year ago, but we put the right of ways on the staff. We were like, okay, you guys can just do that. We, it's like this knee-jerk motion. We always approve it anyways, but things are changing in Port Orford. And in some ways, we're gonna be hanging our staff out there with contentious right-of-way issues, and I think that was a lot of I think that was a lot of the intention about putting it on the council in the first place. I hope that it was to protect the employees a little bit. It should be a total easy duty, like we look at it as part of the consent calendar. But it's something that has been discussed, so I just want to get a consensus on if that's something you guys would consider putting on an agenda. Because it's not necessarily one of our top goals, but
It's something we can, if we,
I guess that's the real question is, I see things changing with building codes. I remember we talked about refining our checklists and having the county come back, or someone match those things up, like the original plan and with the county plan, like it should be done. We had a lot of transition, that hasn't happened. So I'm asking if we can kind of not make that a priority, but can we go back and just make sure that those dots are crossed and the Ts? Because I always thought that just those initial checklists and those initial things are what's going to get us. Having that established and then seeing what happens on the other end at least gives us something to go back to the.
Yeah,
and that's why.
absolutely. It sounds like you're saying two different things, though. You're talking about the right-of-way things, and also just this thing of making sure that when the county does approval, they don't change things from what the city approval was.
Or that we're just aware of
The
it.
final,
Yeah.
the city has the
We
final
should be
check.
making the last decision.
We make the final decision.
Well, that's where we got to months ago,
Yeah.
but it got lost.
Does John understand that, or do you know this?
Well, that's part of the reason that
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I was assuming we were talking about permits to occupy the right of way, but now I'm not sure when you talk about the county and being.
No, that's what I originally started with, was the right of ways. And then I was like, well, so I apologize. My first statement started with the right of ways and maybe taking that off staff. And then I segued into, well, we did talk about our application and the boxes that got filled and making sure that the stuff that we see on our original application that comes through our door matches with what the final project is at the county.
Well, I think we made a motion that it comes back to us and we're the last.
Right, and I'm 100% sure, and that's all I'm saying is I just want to touch base back with that and consider the right of ways. And is that okay with you guys because it's stuff we talked about before?
Well, I think the right of way is, you can probably have thrown back on us by consensus.
Yes.
well, the only thing we're doing on right of ways as far as staff is just going out, making sure what they're gonna do in the right of way isn't on top of a water line or a main or something like that. Other than that, we're pretty much approving them unless it's gonna be an obstacle to the
Yeah.
city, but that's it.
Well, and this is an effort to be transparent as possible. I hate that people think that we're not transparent, and I think this is a pretty easy way for us to say, well, we're reviewing all that we can. It goes in right, it comes back right. So I'm sorry if you don't like it, but our process is good.
John, does your process include like finding out what like neighbors think, like if somebody's gonna be cutting down their tree next door to the next door neighbor in the right of way or building something, or?
Well, not really for trees, 'cause we haven't really had it. It's rare that we get a request to cut down a tree. But if we do, we go look at it to make sure that it's not gonna disturb the neighbor, or if it is actually leading to the road. Because by the OR, the right of way, the maintenance of the right of way is responsible by the adjacent property owner.
Right.
So the only thing I'm really approving that doesn't come to council is fence installs and use of right of way for temporary or, basically fences is the only thing we're ever really seeing, right, John? I mean, occasionally clearing, Scotch broom. And we've seen 2 or 3 of those. What we do need to see, and we need to definitely be on top of for staff, is when we get the right of way permits for people that are gonna develop a piece of property. Because that way we can go out, find out where our lines are, where their driveway should go, verify drainage, right?
Well, that's like,
that's-
for the whole time I've been here, we've been talking about controlled growth, and you say something that comes across negative, but it is time that we need to control the growth, not hinder it, not stop it, but make sure that we dot all our T's, cross our I's, because that's, in my opinion, how we be transparent, is look at the picture. Or look at the process, but this is a long conversation, and I'm just trying to get a consensus on if you would be interested in talking about this.
Do you think we have to
Meeting,
have
or
a
you want me to
workshop on
table
it?
it into a workshop?
You're the mayor.
I know, but that's, okay, well,
Yes.
I'm just kidding.
Yes.
No, you're right, but because we had talked about it.
It's not a bad idea to look at that policy over and over again. I thought with the county, we'd come to the conclusion where the county said they would notify us if the plans deviated from what came to us first.
And we had in-depth conversation about it, but I don't know 100%
I don't
sure,
either.
and that's, so it's just another reiteration, which we'll probably have to do a lot of.
I think when a building permit goes to county, there needs to be like a list, and we expect that back to be approved as a.
Well, and that's the process, though, is we have our checklist with the maps and everything they
But
put
then we
in.
get it back to make the plan.
Right.
Well, that's what we want.
That's
John,
what we decided.
so you know, that's the background is that,
Come on.
the problem is that there was a problem with this that was consistent, and which is why the council made that decision. And so this is something you should make sure you are aware of.
Well, now we're talking about the buildings versus the occupancy. This is the second topic. And, right, and I've tried to figure out what our relationship is with the county on the building permit and approval process. And what I heard is that we technically don't have an IGA, an intergovernmental agreement with them because they want to charge us a lot of money or something.
That was for enforcement.
That was for.
Thank
code
you.
enforcement.
Okay, good, but not for
That's,
the.
and we always get to, we don't have the teeth to enforce things, but this is just, I pay my permit fee, it's okay with the city's list, and you're the building department, and that's, and I guess that's, and it is a little rhetorical, but I just want to be transparent, and there's some stuff that unfortunately, and it's not even that transparent, it's just the perceptions of how people feel about things, and with the way we could be growing, I want to make sure that we're.
I think this would be a good topic for a workshop, actually, but.
Okay, go ahead, Joe.
So having worked with our building codes for a little bit now, I'm fairly certain that our code is actually, after they file with us, they file with the county, and then they're supposed to bring the signed and approved paperwork back to us so we have a copy of it. But I've never seen that in any of the things I've worked with. So I think this is circling back to, we already have the rules in place, it's just we don't have a way of enforcing it.
And it's a process is what's bothering me. It's not a rule, this is the process to do what you're doing.
Well, it sounds like to me the county's not doing their part of this process.
When we know that the enforcement angle of it is not good, so maybe I'm just banging my head against the wall looking for other ways we can go after it without putting it on us.
I think we need to have a much better understanding. I think we've all experienced the problems, our citizens have experienced the problems and frustrations. There's been lots of feeling that there's things that are unfair, that there are things that are untransparent, and I think we all would do better to understand what the process is so everybody's clear on it. And I think, John, you've tried to help me clean up some things, this process, but
We should maybe have the county come to one of our meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah, they used to do that. Well, we've all seen it. You get a guy that puts in a permit and is gonna build a shed.
Yep.
And it turns into a living quarters with a bath and a shower. So we've got a garage that went up, that was a garage, that is now turning into a house. But we can't even get the county to enforce it and stop their building. That's what I don't get. That's what's so frustrating, that even though the county knows that they're building what they said they weren't,
Right.
then nothing happens and the bill keeps going. I see two or three of them. I've seen two or three of them, maybe
Right.
four.
And it even
it's
almost
just, I mean,
seems like the county, it appears in some cases that the county may even like be facilitating it or something.
Okay.
In a roundabout way, yeah, I think so. I mean, they don't have a grip of it, just like we don't have a grip.
Okay, so do we have any other workshops on the bone? Because the workshop does have merit for this, but it would be nice to conglomerate.
We have the water one.
If I could, right, we have also a homeless one. So I put out a manager's report that mentioned a workshop, I think on the 15th or something, but I think that's a Saturday. I meant the 13th. It's a Thursday of July. Thursday the 13th is when, remember, I've been meeting with Lauren and some of the end-to-end people. So that was gonna be, I had two topics on that workshop. One was gonna be the homeless one, and I had something else, but I can't remember, but maybe it was gonna be the water discussion that we started.
Probably was.
Kind of work on that, and then if you wanna add building, yeah, I think it's the 13th at 5:30. And again,
And it's the application process that I'm asking about, not the enforcement side.
For me, it's, I guess it would be what I would call the inspection process. Usually what happens is you get the building permit, and then, they inspect to make sure your frames are 16 inch and all that stuff, and then the plumbing, and the inspector should be coming out on a regular cycle during the construction, and they'd be looking at, hey, this is bigger than I thought, or, this isn't even in the right spot, or all these things.
Exactly.
So.
And occupancy on the other end of it too is also something that, or just just use, but we have an executive session still.
That might be an ordinance change that we come up with, so we have some teeth, that if somebody ends up just making their garage into a home without permits, that we can do that.
That's what we should be able to avoid if the process is done. I don't know.
Well, that's okay. We have some code issues with enforcement, and it's on my list to get at, because one of the things I've sort of heard from the county, because we didn't go in to get their building code enforcement contract, is they said, we do the permitting and inspecting, you do the enforcement. And I don't know, there's probably a gray area in there somewhere, but if I'm gonna do the enforcement, I need to make sure that we've got a code that I can enforce. And the way I looked at it right now, I think I saw some really outdated stuff. So anyway.
Building code and ordinance, but like building code enforcement and code violation they're the same thing. Because there's building inspectors and there's plan review, whereas an ordinance violation is just an ordinance officer that's authorized to go write a ticket.
Oh, it can be more than that.
But but are they considered the same thing? Like a code violation and a building code violation seem different.
Yeah, they are.
But anyways, workshop or agenda? It's sounding like maybe a workshop. We had the 13th workshop, and that was for the neighbor to neighbor homeless discussion. And were we going to
possibly water?
Possibly water, and perhaps this.
Okay, so
This one might be more, this one might need to be a separate one.
Yeah, I mean, it's too loaded up.
All right, good. So
I think like having us have, thinking of it from beginning to end, because we are all interfacing with other citizens who are asking us, well, how can this be happening? Why is this happening? We're getting all these questions all the time. And none of us, I don't understand these things that John's talking about. So I think if we could all understand the holes, the things we want to patch up and fix, get John's input. I'd love to hear what you're the one who's out in the front lines. And
I think there's one front line he's a public, these are usually private, anyway, I think it might be one that John's technically not on, but he sees on the.
But he sees, like, these driveways running off onto our road and all sorts of.
Okay, sorry guys. So we will, that makes a heck of a too long of a workshop. So we need to talk, we already have the neighbor schedule.
If I could, with this whole thing on the county stuff, I would like to get, the county guy here for a workshop. And so until I really make some progress there, let's hold off on that and I'll try to make strides. And I think I'm gonna have to go down to Gold Beach anyway, and they pop in and say hi and stuff.
Do they have a guy right now?
They got a guy named.
The problem.
No, oh, well, actually, I've heard they had a guy who left, they had a guy named Ryan who left there, so it's the Garrett Thompson, I think.
Yep.
Yep,
I
Garrett.
thought that Garrett was the building inspector.
He is.
Ryan was the codes enforcement.
No, Ryan was also a building inspector, and he left to do something else, and I thought it was a pretty good fit for him, but. Yeah, I was down there in the county when he was there, he was a good kid and all that stuff.
Okay, but that seed's planted to.
All right, I will effort on that.
To be determined.
Yeah.
We'll talk about right away at the next meeting. And, sorry to get sidetracked. All right, so now we can't close this meeting, so I would entertain.
Turn off the recording.
Sure.
Well, not yet, we have to.
I will.
We will turn the recording off after the motion is made to go into executive session and record it, and then we'll shut it off. So,
Yeah, just an announcement.
I was just trying to catch you before you get shut off.
What's the OR?
192-6602D.
2D, to confer with designated representatives in labor negotiations.
I don't know. I don't even know if I was right.
You are.
You were good, yeah.
There's a guess.
I would make a motion to go into executive session under 192.6602D for what negotiations?
Labor.
For labor negotiations.
Okay, quick vote on that. Councilor Patty?
Yes.
Councilor Rask?
Yes.
Councilor Vices?
Yes.
Councilor Burns?
Yes.
And Councilor Barnes?
Jim is.
Okay, now Tom.